Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast, RPG Site's weekly podcast. I'm your host, Brian Vitale. Joining me, I have the usual crew. We have Josh Torres,
Hola.
Mikhail Mednani,
Hello, I'm back.
Adam Vitale,
Hello.
James Galizio,
Hello.
and Chao Min-woo. So if you've been listening to this podcast every week, the last 2 weeks were kind of like a weird kind of stalling period, mid-period, where it just happened to be how the schedule lined up that those 2 weeks were kind of a gap in terms of releases, in terms of events, in terms of big, headlines or news. This week is not that, because this week we're recording this podcast literally like the day after GDC, where Adam and James were able to attend, and if they posted a few things on our socials, and they're preparing some articles for our website in terms of what they're able to see and do at GDC. And of course, that's what we're going to start with, just their time at the event, what they saw, who they talked to, their impressions, just any sort of, feedback or resulting information coming out of that. And then we had 2 embargoes left for this week for some upcoming, for some now released RPGs. So this is Monster Hunter Stories 3, and this is GreedFall: The Dying World. So 2 games that released in early March. And then, of course, we have a fair number of headlines. We had a few different publishers kind of give out details for upcoming games in March, April, and beyond. We had a shadow drop from Square Enix we're going to talk about, and a few other things. So this week is not like the last 2 weeks. We have plenty to talk about, but without further ado, we're going to start with kind of GDC impressions, what do we want to call it? So I'm going to kind of let Adam and James take point on this. They were the 2 people from RPG Site on this podcast that attended GDC. I think you've both attended GDC in the past, so you can talk about this year versus last year, and basically take it wherever. I didn't attend, you guys attended, so you can take it away. I'll hand it off to Adam first, but then James can jump in at any time as you talk about what you saw, what you did, and all that. So take it away, Adam.
Yeah, so this year's GDC, they kind of advertised it with like a different framing around it, where they were calling it like a festival of gaming. It's like a rebrand of sorts. Now, on the actual, like in the convention center on the floor itself, didn't really feel that much different than last year because of that. I think the show floor, the media opportunities and things like that felt similar to last year. But I'm just going to, mention the elephant in the room right away. There's a lot of other factors globally, politically around, the event of that were, contributing to like the atmosphere at the event. And we can touch on those in a little bit. But anyways, GDC in the last couple of years, one reason why James and I have been able to go is it seems like they are kind of elevating like the presence of media a little bit, and demos and previews and interviews and things like that. It is still a very much a developer like focused conference, meetings between developers and publishers and funding and opportunities, and these sorts of talks are going on all over the place, which media is less involved in, right? But there are quite a few events now for people like James and me to attend for like demos and interviews and things like that on more of like an advertising media discussion preview sort of angle. So as far as RPG Site goes, James and I both had a handful of individual appointments where we're meeting with certain dev teams to talk about various games that they've been working on. Some of those are embargoed, some of them are not. As well as, like, for example, James and I, just to start off, we went to like a Nintendo partner event, right? And so for this event, this was on Tuesday, it wasn't for any Nintendo games, like Nintendo first-party games, but they had basically a hotel room, a hotel kind of conference area set up for media to play several different games that that are coming out shortly, that are on Switch too, right? A lot of indie games and like kind of smaller scale games, but a few bigger ones as well. For example, Elden Ring. So that was one that, admittedly, I've never played Elden Ring. I've watched Brian play a bunch of it, but got to play a little bit of Elden Ring on Switch too. And I, starting out, did not know what I was doing, but I did not die. So I'm proud of myself. But
There you go.
What section of the game was it? Was it
very
just
beginning. It was just the opening.
Very beginning, yeah.
oh,
I guess I should say I did die to like the starting boss that I think you're supposed to die to. But
the Gold Knight dude? Or
yeah.
whatever.
But anyways, Josh played Elden Ring on Switch 2 last year, right? Like at PAX?
Yes.
Yeah, and you wrote up about it. I think you combined it with some other impressions that it was just like, and you and many others wrote up that like Elden Ring on Switch 2 was very low frame rate, very unstable, and just not a good port at that time. And since then, Elden Ring on Switch 2 has kind of been very silent, like radio silent. Playing it there, like I thought it was pretty solid. James played it in handheld mode. I played it on the docked mode, and it's not going to beat a high end PC, right? And it's like it was locked, I think, at like roughly 30 frames per second, but it was pretty darn stable. Like once I kind of got used to just a minute of playing through, like okay, here's the frame rate that it's playing at, and here's what it looks like. Like eventually, as I was playing through the game, I wasn't consciously thinking this is a compromised version or this is, a lesser version. Like, no, I'm just playing Elden Ring now.
That's good to hear. Yeah, they really needed to do a lot of work on that, so it was no surprise that they delayed it last year when it was slated to release. And that's really like I think I was like, I don't know if they're gonna get it together for the scope of the game, but it's nice to hear that like it seems like they've got it under control to some extent.
And other previews have said similar things. I did not see this myself, but I did see one person mention that like when it started raining in the field, there was maybe a little bit less of a little bit of a noticeable performance hit once the rain started happening. I didn't see that. So like maybe not going to be, there's still I think
I
things
didn't
to iron
either,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, there might be still things to iron out. And of course, we're playing the very beginning of the game. I saw some people talking about like, well, what do different areas of the game might perform that are maybe more intense? And well, we don't know. We didn't see those. So, but yeah, that's just one example of some of the demos that we played.
James, I'm curious. So obviously, I read your preview, and I had people reach out to me because I don't know why they didn't ask you directly because you're pretty active on Blue Sky. But a lot of people said that, do you know if VRR was enabled handheld? And I don't think this is something you can actually like tell
It's not
from the
something you
early
can
part.
really, that's
Yeah.
not something you can really tell.
And the other thing I was curious about is you mentioned how on the Steam Deck you like just put this up in the beginning that you said the Steam Deck gives you a higher average frame rate, and I remember this because the like we played it at like 40 FPS on Steam Deck, but like for the DLC, I don't know if you tried it there, but the DLC is a lot more demanding. So
Yeah.
if based on what you've said of the opening area, I have like not much confidence in how the DLC area will run because that. Yeah,
I
go
will
ahead.
say that it didn't feel like it was a variable refresh rate in handheld mode, unless there was like a single frame dip or something. So I'm seeing people that are speculating it's 30 to 40 FPS. I think it's just capped at 30, so I don't think that really says anything at this point if it's capped, because
Yeah.
it could have some extra, like, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
It's funny to see like what people who played Elden Ring, like James and I, like what when you start the beginning of the game, you generally know like where are just like early stress points. So James went for Margit right away, and I went the other way to the dragon boss and the lake as my test.
I should have done that. At least running to Margit, you get to a point where it does start getting windy and raining a little bit. So
yeah, but it's good either way, Like both areas are a good like very very early indication. Like okay, is it gonna dip here?
But yeah, some other like demos that were at the Nintendo event, for example, a couple of games that don't really fit our scope. Like there was like Mouse PI for Hire, which is kind of like a cartoony, like a Doom like or a Duke Nukem like, only with like old school like cartoon graphics,
like Steamboat Willie.
Yeah,
and like scale. Yeah, I see that. It looks really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a neat mix of like it plays and feels like a DOS era Doom or first person shooter game, but it looks like Cuphead or something, right? That
That's
cartoon
so cool.
graphics. So that's pretty fun. There's a game from Konami. I forget what it's called, but it's like you play as an octopus and sort of a side scroller type of thing, which is
Darwin's
pretty cute.
Paradox.
Yeah, Darwin's Paradox. Like that's kind of just
Fun,
kind of a
funny,
cute.
funny thing about that is I sat down to play a little bit of that, and I told the Konami rep, it's like, so I kind of felt like I needed to play this, considering you guys donated $25,000 to Long Beach Aquarium, and I live in Long Beach. And that's when I found out octopus don't live that long. So the octopus that was named after the game, after the donation, died a couple of months ago.
Well, that's sad.
Yeah. Apparently they only live like a year and a half in captivity, and it was already like fully grown. So
But yeah, that's like this is a game I had heard of, but I hadn't really seen it. Just kind of a fun, like not an RPG at all. Don't get me wrong. Just like you play as a octopus, and you're just kind of like trying to avoid rats and aliens, and it's weird.
Is it like a side scroller?
Yes.
Like is
it's
it like a
very
platformer?
inside.
Or-
It's very inside.
Yeah,
It's
like
very
Okay.
it
Okay.
kind of reminded me of Little Nightmares, only not so like spooky. For that
Interesting.
type of game.
Okay.
There was Mina the Hollower was there,
Yeah, Mina the Holler was there.
and we're kind of everyone's kind of asking the demo that was there. As far as I understand it, was pretty much like complete game, done game.
Yeah,
In
what-
fact, they didn't want us to record because they didn't want people to like capture the game, because like if you knew what you're doing, you could go to the final boss, and they didn't want people to like record that. But of course, everyone's asking like, well, when's this game coming out, right? If you got a complete demo here, it was supposed to come out last year. What's up with that? And they basically said soon, and they said they were going to like, they were still submitting it and whatnot to the publishers and the console holders, platform holders. But yeah, we got to play a little bit more of Mina the Hollower. As far as I understand it, basically the full finished game.
Yeah, I was gonna say something about as a tangent, it's kind of nice how like Konami, for like even their smaller things, have been doing a lot of like community stuff in LA County, which is weird because they did it for
okay.
Silent Hill F. Because
I didn't know that they were so
yeah, because
involved.
like because like in Little Tokyo, like around Silent Hill F, they literally had like a metro car that was all gussied up for Silent Hill F, and Little Tokyo itself was basically almost fully sponsored by Silent Hill F for a month. You had multiple places that had specific food items that were part of it. They had vendors, and they had like music from the game playing through for a whole month. Crazy.
Is that where you got the Silent Hill F shirt?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
I got it at Anime Expo.
Oh, right,
But,
right.
But it's just one of those things where it's like thinking about that, it's like, man, companies don't do that much these days outside of Japan, do they?
I wish they did, but that's cool.
Another event we went to on the same day was Xbox Partners. Now, this was actually the event last year where Claire Obscure was there, and we actually got last year we got a kind of an impromptu interview with one of the producers on that game, and I've seen that interview actually like tossed around quite a bit because we got some pretty good insight on that. Probably nothing quite as like obvious and splashy this year at this year's Xbox event, but there were a few things. James wrote up a preview for At Fate's End, which is from like the Spiritfarer people. So what do you think of that?
I thought it was really good. It was one of those games, and we've all run into it, where it's not immediately clear if it's an RPG or if it fits our scope when it first gets announced. But then you get a chance to see it at an event or further down the line. It's like, oh no, this fits our scope.
For people who don't know like what this is, what is at Fate's End?
So it's really kind of hard to describe because part of it is like a boss rush, kind of like Fury.
Okay.
But there's actual like exploration in between each boss fight, and the whole point of that is to discover, because you're fighting your sibling, like other members of your family, and the whole kind of selling point is that you're not just fighting them to defeat them. There's also like a conversation going on at the same time. So, for example, the one I fought in the demo, Camilla, you're exploring the castle that you and her grew up in, and you have a few questions about like what had happened since you last saw her, and so you have these questions, and as you're exploring, you get little hints that are like treated as cards in like a narrative deck, And then once you get enough, you can actually put together and like figure out exactly the answer to those questions, even if they're not stated directly. And you can use that information once you verified it in between phases of the boss fight to make dialogue choices. And if you make the right choice, not even just in terms of the right information, but the right information delivered the right way, it can help diffuse the situation, which will like make the battle end quicker. And then also while you're exploring, you can find stuff like XP to get skill points, and also your skill trees or family tree, which is neat. You get access to new abilities. I was talking with the director, and he mentioned that one of the biggest inspirations for the game was Transistor. So, and you can kind of really see it because one of the elements of the combat is that for your skills, when you have enough energy to use them, you kind of pause the game while you're using the skill. So for like a fireball, when you queue up the fireball, it pauses the game while you're aiming it, which gives you a chance to kind of counter an attack if you time it right, stuff like that. It's really neat. I did see some parts that I wasn't able to really fully delve into in the demo. Like I did notice that you can actually get accessories or something for your weapon or your armor or whatever. So there is that. Like, and to be clear, they self-described it as an RPG. Because I asked them, so what sort of game this is, and RPG was one of those qualifiers they used. And while playing the game, even if I wasn't able to see every RPG element, I could see, yeah, this is close enough for it at least merits like further coverage. But I had a blast with it. I'd say that the director, obviously, like I just said, mentioned that Transistor was the biggest inspiration, but I feel like a lot of people, in this voice call especially, I'd say that the closest thing I can think of in terms of, it's not one-to-one, but in terms of vibes, is actually Odin Sphere.
Okay.
Because it's a lot of like you have the side-scrolling platforming and exploration, and the combat's really fascinating. So it has a bit of an unorthodox method of melee attacking. Like you just use like the square button or whatever to attack, but you aim it. So wherever you like aim the analog stick in 360 degrees, that's where you focus your attack. Which means that, for example, there's like one attack pattern in that boss fight in the demo where Kamiya will spawn a bunch of electric nodes that if they link together, they kind of make a mesh that if you touch, you like obviously take damage and whatnot. So you want to strike at the nodes specifically and precisely to cut the chain so you can move around, and once you've cut enough of the nodes, then it will switch to the next attack. You'll be able to get a few hits in. But it's really fascinating stuff like that in terms of like the attack patterns and what they do with the actual combat. And this is early on. This is like the first boss. So that's, you have the least amount of skills, you have the least amount of upgrades, it's the most simple of attack patterns, and already it's interesting stuff. Pretty much everyone I know that tried that demo at the Idea to Xbox event came away saying, yeah, that was one of the, if not their game of the show.
Nice.
There were other games at the Xbox event that didn't really, I did not have a whole lot of interest in, but probably the most popular game there was like the Invincible fighting game, based on the cartoon show. I don't know a whole lot about it, but yeah, that was a pretty popular lineup there at the Xbox event. There was like an indie narrative farming sim called Delphinium. I actually posted a news bit on the site about this. That was also a very interesting game at the Xbox partner showcase because it's pretty much like a solo dev game. More accurately, maybe like 3 or 4 people, but primarily the one person that was there to demo it is someone she was there at the event, basically 5 years out of high school, and this was a high school project that had become, much more than that, picked up by Serenity Forge as a publisher and able to demo it, alongside all these other like partner games at this showcase. It's it's called Delphinium, like I said. From the team is based in Australia, and it's like a kind of a 3D pixel art style farming sim, but it has like elements of like a Xenoblade like community chart type of thing with the lines that connect like the different characters and how they're related. It has farming elements, quests. Maybe not quite so much like an
Crafting.
RPG.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has like crafting and cooking and things like that.
But it does have like we were able to confirm that it has like multiple endings depending on like what sort of connection you make and what you do. Even if it's not an RPG, it's definitely something I if nothing else, I will end up covering like when it comes out. But yeah, it was honestly the most interesting thing I saw there. Like, I think the moment that I saw that connections system and I was like, wait a second, this is the Xenoblade 1 connection tree. It was like, that's neat. Game looks really good. I'm very curious about that soundtrack. I wasn't really able to hear anything from the soundtrack because of the realities of the event, as it were. But on the website, the way they describe the soundtrack is as inspired by source like games such as the Atelier series and Octopath Traveler, and like looking at the game, what the game is, it's like that would make sense. I wonder if they have any like on like YouTube or whatnot, because yeah, I really liked the way I saw that game. It's really cool to have mostly a solo dev project, straight out of high school no less, be given a spotlight, not a massive spotlight, but a spotlight at an event that's hosted by a for now hardware platform.
Yeah. Other, like, we don't need to go through absolutely everything, but like I got to play a little bit of Mongil Star Drive at this event, Star Dive, which is like a Korean Netmarble gacha type game, and I had actually a separate interview and preview for that will go up eventually. It's kind of admittedly an awkward preview for me because it's like I'm kind of familiar with these gacha games, but I don't actually play them, so I'm probably not asking the best questions. But they were, they understood. But yeah, that was at the event. One kind of interesting moment at the event was so this is an Xbox partner event. So again, indie games, smaller scale games, other developers, things like that. But Phil Spencer and the new boss, Asha, I forget the last name. I'm sorry. Sorry,
Sharma.
Oh yes, but yeah, they actually did come and kind of toured a little bit and played some of the demos. It was actually kind of amusing. It almost felt like paparazzi because Asha like sat in one of the chairs, put on a headset, and started playing one of the demos. And obviously everyone's taking photos because like here's the new Xbox boss playing a game at an Xbox event type of thing. I actually got to talk to Phil Spencer for like 5 to 10 minutes, just kind of about random things. So he was basically like, I'm retired. Even his name tag just said, hello, my name is retired. I actually was talking to him about, like, I'm from RPG site, we're covering all these Xbox games with RPGs. And he was like, I'm really excited for Clockwork Revolution and I'm really excited for Fable and, all these things that, obviously he's retired now, but things that he had been working on and probably in communication with these teams developing these games that are very much in our wheelhouse. So it was kind of nice just to, obviously someone in his position just to like literally just talk with him, face to face for quite a, more than 5, less than 10 minutes. And he was just kind of like, you could tell he was just kind of, he was relieved in a sense. It felt like just like, I'm just here to have fun. I'm no longer the boss. Just sit there to see what the games are like.
On your back,
I kind of wished that I'd seen him. Like I missed him. Like I was like so absorbed in some game. I forget which one it was. I would have asked him how he's enjoying Marathon because he really plays a lot of Destiny 2, so I'm sure he's been playing Marathon.
But that's also like a really rare and interesting situation because you don't really get those opportunities to like just talk like almost like off the record, like real face to face like conversation with someone that just barely retired or announced his retirement in that position too. It's kind of like in a weird moment in time that you're like, wow, I get to talk to you under these circumstances now.
Yeah, Asha was actually kind of bit, maybe a little bit awkward. She had like an entourage that kind of like shuttled her in, played a few games, and then kind of like pretty quickly shuttled her out. So like didn't get a whole lot of chance to talk. I didn't talk with her, and I don't think she talked with a lot of people. But Phil kind of hung around. He was just there to chill because he's like I'm unemployed or whatever. So otherwise, throughout the event, there's a couple of embargoed discussions I had, and I think James had maybe that like I can't talk about yet. But there's a few other like previews that are kind of on my like writing backlog. Like for example, I saw Never's End, which is sort of like a procedurally generated tactical RPG.
Oh yeah, I saw this at PAX West. I'm curious to know what you thought of it because I thought it was like a pretty fascinating. It's almost like voxel like with like
Yes.
some sort of like weather system involved as well, from what I remember.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that like a lot of this is just a small game. It's not a big game. It's like I think he said the development team was like 8 people or something like that. But he said he'd been working on it for like 6 years, and you could kind of see the mix of like excitement and nerves that these creators have. I think he worked at Bungie, if I remember correctly. I apologize if I'm misremembering or mixing people up. But now he's working on this indie project and like working on it for 5-6 years. Kind of, it's been his life, and now he's getting to show it off to people like me. Obviously hoping for like getting eyeballs on it, but just like I can't imagine what the sort of nerves that you might feel. Like, what do these people think about this game that I've been pouring so much into, right? And a lot of these demos are also not technically like at GDC, but they're around GDC. Like they're at hotels in the area, or they're at other events like Day of the Devs, which is not. They have like a partnership with GDC, but the Day of the Devs event is not technically GDC, which is again a bunch of indies, kind of collaborating and showing off their games. But just kind of meeting with these people, showing, talking about their games is really cool. This one, well, there's a couple I can't talk about. One I can talk about, which was kind of an interesting one. Zero Parades. So Zero Parades
Oh yes.
for Dead Spies is the next game. I finally learned how it's pronounced. That ZA/UM. It's just one syllable, pretty much. It's like Zum.
Oh.
That's how they pronounce it. If you're ever wondering, maybe that's not quite right, but that's how they said it to me. Was we are Zum. Anyways, so that discussion. I met with 2 of the writers on that game, and I hadn't had a chance to play like the Steam Next Fest demo, so they gave me a little bit of time to play the demo, and then they kind of gave me a little bit of like a guided, discussion, like, hey, here's what we're going for, here's what we're doing, and then I got to sit down and interview them a bit and ask them about the game, and of course I asked them about things I saw in the game. How does it differ from Disco Elysium? What are they doing differently? What were the roles that these people had on Disco Elysium? One of them did work as a writer on Disco Elysium, and one of them is new, to the studio. And then I actually did ask them the hard question, and they were prepared for it, which they should have been, right? Like this Zelm is under a lot of scrutiny for how they treated the creative leads of Disco Elysium, Robert Kurvitz, Alexander Rostov, and Helen Heinper. And basically, I just kind of asked them. Now, these are writers. Remember, like these are just writers. These aren't like the boss. These don't hold they don't hold the purse strings. So like, why should people trust this game? And wait for the preview interview that I write up on that. But basically, what it boils down to is like, we just want to create as writers. We just want to create. We just want to make this game. We have ideas. We want to put them, in this game, and we want to just, let it speak for itself. There's more to it than that, but you'll have to wait for the write up that I do. But that was one of those kind of interesting situations, showing off their game that has kind of this, kind of a nugget of interest in it, but also like a little bit of baggage, right?
Right.
And it was one part about that interview that was actually kind of like interesting to me, and kind of highlights like the different way people approach these sorts of games is 2 things actually. So obviously in this podcast, we're all like RPG heads. We're all kind of nerdy. We're all thinking about like mechanics and things like that. So I was actually talking to them about like, how does Zero Parades, stand apart from Disco Elysium? And they were basically saying well, it's an entirely different genre. And that kind of like caught me slightly off guard, like an entirely different genre. But they weren't talking about like game, like RPG genre. They're talking about, well, like the first game was more like a murder mystery, and this is more like a spy thriller. And when you're thinking about like what
Like a
sorts
movie
of
genre.
yeah, what they're actually thinking books. Like if you're thinking about what sorts of books inspire us, like it's no longer this and this, it's now this and this about these like book genres that were inspiring the game. And like when you think about it for just a second, like, oh yeah, that is really in a novel sense, a murder mystery is different than a spy thriller, right? And that's kind of the approach that these writers had when thinking about the game. Like to us, they're just both like kind of like narrative RPGs, right? But like that narrative part of it is very different. Now, I actually got a chance to play the game. There are obvious similarities to Disco Elysium, so I'm not going to say like, it's totally distinct. But there are definitely, being more of a you're a spy versus you're a detective, and of course it's a little bit, I'm simplifying it a bit. There are a little bit different like considerations in place. As a spy, there's like sometimes when you need to learn things, kind of like a detective, but there's also like moments of like how much do you reveal about yourself to the people you're talking to, because you're like you are a spy, you have a secret identity and things like that. So I'll talk about more of the game in my preview about it, but that was one of the more interesting discussions I had over the week. I don't know if James can talk about any of the other ones that he did. I don't know if he's under embargo or not.
Yeah, I can talk about, like, I interviewed CyberConnect 2 again.
Okay.
This time it was in a different context because it's GDC. I also am writing up a kind of article about one of the panels they had. One of them was the kind of bog standard, here's how to get a job in Japan, where it's like, okay, well, I mean, that's half your panel you do at Anime Expo, even before COVID. Like, Josh, you went to one of those panels. They always say that. They always talk about that stuff. But yeah, there was an interesting panel kind of going over the development timeline and the pitfalls of going from being just a developer, where there's all this biz dev stuff that the publisher takes care of that you don't have to worry about. Just kind of explaining the learning process and, quite frankly, the failures they made when originally developing Fuga and the lessons they learned, and all kind of wrapped up in, hey, despite all the issues, we ended up succeeding what we wanted to do. That being giving, for example, the main reason they wanted to do self-publishing on smaller projects is that a lot of junior devs these days, they'll spend 5 years on a project, and if that project gets canceled before it comes out, they have like nothing to show for it. So it's easier and perhaps better to like target the smaller focused projects with smaller teams. That way, that ideally they take just like 2-3 years. You get, or maybe even less, and you can get them out. You get these devs experience like through a full project. And one example they gave is that one person, that their first game was Fuga 1. By the time that they were working on Fuga 3, they were a creative director because they had received enough experience through the process of working on that trilogy that that management at CyberConnect 2 felt comfortable giving them a creative directorial role and stuff like that. Also talking about like they didn't spend a single cent specifically on marketing. They had trailers, they had people make trailers, but they did not pay, like outside of like folks that were salaried on staff. They did not pay for advertising or anything like that, which was fascinating.
Risky. That's scary. Yeah, I saw your thread about the CyberConnect 2 GDC panel, and one, I think it's like a really fascinating thing. Like you see this a lot of other companies as well, but they use the Fuga series as sort of a way to nurture junior developers that you're talking about, and like we've seen that a lot. Like for example, Nintendo been training up the next generation of developers because people are getting up there in age, so it's always nice to train up the next generation and giving them opportunities. Like I know RGG Studio is also very much on the record of training its junior developers and giving them like more responsibilities. Like in the like I remember one was for in Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. They talked about specifics about that. But two, The one thing I remember you kind of panicking about when watching this presentation from them was they had a lot of lessons to learn and learned very hard lessons when it came to like timelines, when it came to like pricing, and it's like, oh, they learned a lot about like, oh, we should really put more time into like consideration of like how we're doing regional pricing. It shouldn't be done like at the last stretch. It should be something you plan for way in advance when you're starting to think about distribution of these games, because like regional pricing is something that really caught CyberConnect 2 off
Yeah,
guard.
how many panels? I'm assuming it's not the only panel, but how many panels at GDC are you going to have developers talk about the Big Mac Index, which is a real thing? It's a real like thing that people use to gauge the purchasing power between different like regions.
Crazy. Maybe Kelly, do you want to say something?
Yeah, so the regional pricing thing is funny because Fuga, the first one at least, it actually did have regional pricing when it launched, and everyone was happy about that. Like people I knew over here. So like, for some context, it was 899 rupees, which is what $40 used to be on Steam. Obviously, if you do a direct conversion, 899 is a lot less, but that was Valve's price. What happened in February 2022, 899 became 2200, and since then everything they
Ooh.
release has just been like priced awful. Like 2200 is almost as much as what Elden Ring cost over here when it released, like on Steam. So like no one I know buys their stuff anymore. And there's also one more thing which I think James has probably noticed, that CyberConnect 2 does better discounts on console than they do on Steam for a lot of their games. Like I could buy a Fuga on Switch 2, sorry, not Switch 2, on Switch on the eShop for less than what it would cost on Steam. And usually all games are cheaper on Steam on discount. So in addition to like the regional pricing thing, which obviously like, markets like India are probably like a tiny fraction of their audience, but I think just like not matching your console discounts on a platform where you actually can control it is a bit weird.
So I'm looking at it, and I have noticed that. Let me like use the entire price history. The first time that Fuga was available for under $20, like officially on like PC, was January of 2024 when it went on sale for $16 on the Epic Games Store. Since then, it's had a bunch of like half off sales for $20, but they haven't, like, the first time it was available for half off was 2.5 years after launch. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's a long time. Yeah. They're Nintendo now.
The one thing I am noticing, like looking at deal like GG deals, is that I didn't even know that they sold their games on like sites like stores that aren't just Steam. Like obviously I knew they were on Epic, and they were also technically on like the Microsoft Store because it's Play Anywhere. But you can buy keys at like Games Planet or Fanatical or what else? Game Belay.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that they
Okay, I just checked the eShop price history, and it's been it actually dropped to $8 in 2025, on May 2025 on the eShop. I believe it's never hit that price on Steam.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I hope their CyberConnect 2 CEO Matsuyama goes out to some Western events this year. I definitely, and definitely because I don't want to catch him and like try to talk to him about dot hack. Definitely not.
Yeah, okay, so that's weird. So you are correct that it was $8 at one point, but I'm actually looking, and it seems like as far as the tracking goes, it was only $8 once, and every other time it's been synced up with the Steam discount. So I don't know what was up with that. Maybe they messed up and they didn't mean to. Let me check like PS4, PS5. Because now I'm curious now. Because that reads to me as less the no, it was the same on PlayStation. So was it maybe meant to go that low on PC and they just didn't do it?
I don't know,
Weird.
but this is like a running joke with me and some people who like track prices for some of these games which we're interested in. And This is like kind of a thing where now that it's been this price on the eShop, no one I know is going to buy it on Steam until it drops to that price. And this is like going just a bit on a tangent. Like, I don't know if you remember this. There's that Yoshi Switch game which had like a $1 price mistake digitally on GameStop. And I missed that. So I'm never going to play that until I can get it for $1 now. So it's like one of those in jokes now.
Any other significant takeaways from GDC?
There's a few I want to mention. We went to a couple other panels. We had appointments, so we couldn't go to all the panels, but one panel that we did go to, there was a lot of Claire Obscure panels. Like, obviously it was a very big game last year, so kind of like a lot of post release, like, hey, here's some of the ways we developed it, and a lot of interest in that.
I will say,
go for it.
The trippiest thing about GDC this year is, like, we've only been twice, obviously. But last year, when Expedition 33 was basically a footnote at the Idea at Xbox event, and we talked with the devs, and it's like, it was a big game for us, but at GDC, most people weren't really even thinking about it that much, like last year. Whereas this year, everybody was talking about it. They had 3 separate panels. Everyone was talking about Expedition 33. It's wild seeing that, like, night and day difference like that. Like, insane.
Yeah, literally at the Xbox event last year where we got that interview I mentioned, or we both did, it was like in the corner of the Xbox event in some like lounge, Anyways, we went to one of the panels on audio, and they talked a lot about how a lot of their panels actually ended up basically being broadly, I'm not a developer, like, hey, we used a lot of Unreal Engine like tools and kind of like pre-made development kits, and we didn't stray too much from the path. We just basically use these development kits, and a lot of the code in our game is just from those kits. Like, I think Polygon put it, our friend Gio at Polygon put it this way: like, a lot of this Claire Obscure panels, not like intentionally so, were pretty effective advertisements for Unreal Engine. Kind of like, hey, we were able to do this with these tools, and not relatively like
not
just
customizing, not creating bespoke, unique stuff for them. There's like,
it's like we just used the tools that they had, like most of it. Anyways, we went to the audio panel, and probably the most unexpected but interesting kind of thing that they showed was one of these sound like feels or tones that we were inspired by was the anime Fire Force, which, if you've ever seen Fire Force, the anime, like, it does some pretty like fun stuff with like the explosion and fire whoosh type sounds, right? And how that like sounds in that anime. And if you watch the anime and played the game, like, yeah, I see that. I see that connection where they're inspired by that. And they actually like played a clip of the anime with French subtitles. That was like not really what we expected. Like, I wasn't expecting to see a big Fire Force clip during GDC, but we did. So that was fun.
It was really fascinating, especially the audio panel, like the material panel, which I forget the exact title, but it was over like how they were using smart materials and was like sponsored by like Adobe Substance. It was really fascinating just hearing some stuff about how they developed the game, where it's like they didn't have a Slack, they had a Discord. They literally showed a Discord message from the director just saying, say magnifique. It's like for like feedback. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, basically, like, they were showing how they like their development flow, and a lot of it was just like we would ask the director in Discord what he would think, and he would just like give a heart emoji, like, it's good.
Yeah,
that's
Discord.
Really funny.
Yeah, Discord and Google Drive, and finding like it was like I didn't go to the programming panel, but I did talk with some people that did, and the long and short of it is that they did not touch C++ once. They entirely coded that game using Unreal Engine's like blueprint system.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
and that was like a very similar vibe to what they were saying when it came to like the materials panel, because they said unless we absolutely had to, we did not do any manual texturing. We had smart materials, and then we used masks on them. At least obviously for character models, that's like unless they absolutely had to. But for the environment, a lot of like 90, they said their words, 95% of it was just setting a smart material on a 3D model and then using masks on it. One example they gave was a banner. There was a smart material for the banner itself, and then they used a mask to like kind of deteriorates the banner to give it like if it's meant to be like tattered or burnt or something like that. So it was a lot of just, and this was something they said in every panel is good enough is good enough.
Yep.
You don't have to just do things the way that are considered best practice. The best practice is what works best for you and your team. Which
Yeah, I'm kind of interested, like with all these, behind the scenes looks on Clear Obscure's development. Like, what are the takeaways from developers who go to these panels, and what like I wonder what their takeaway is like moving forward in their development process on future projects. I'm kind of really fascinated, like kind of the mindset and how people process information. Of like what do you what's your takeaway from this? Because from what they're describing, and this kind of maybe reductive in a sense, but it's like their process is relatively more scrappy than what you would think out of like a more triple A sort of development flow and environment.
Yeah, it
yeah,
felt kind of like
scrappy I'd say is
homemade.
the operative
Yeah.
word. Yeah. And it's one of those things where like obviously it's not a AAA game, but most people, if you're not directly, if you don't have your hand like finger on the pulse of game development and whatnot, I'd imagine that most people who played this game, they couldn't tell you that it wasn't a AAA game because the production values in practice were good enough, even if there were reused assets and like the main thing that they did was just tweaking smart materials. The game's scope and its fidelity, like most people are just not gonna know.
Very interesting.
I forget what it was, but it reminds me of like I think I don't remember for sure, but I think it was people with the worst intentions on social media looking at I think it was Last of Us Part 2 because that was in all the wrong people's crosshairs for the wrong reason. Like they reused like a ladder from Uncharted 4, like texture or something, and I might be getting the specific details wrong. And I was like, how dare you not make everything from scratch, boutique, in-house with your like army of 1,000 developers. It's like, no, like, and obviously there's been dialogue about, how
It's
many total
crazy
people,
how
including contractors and support, worked on these
yeah.
games. You don't want to shortchange anyone, but also like you said, good enough's good enough. If they can use something out of Unreal that works, then just use that. Don't spend a month recreating it from scratch for no net benefit.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It's really fascinating though how like the conversation of that has switched up on social media because I remember like seeing that The Last of Us Part 2 stuff, but also at the same time when Spider-Man 2 was launching, so many people were like, why'd you completely remodel all of this stuff when you already had like high quality assets from Spider-Man Remastered? Why would you spend all this
Yeah, they spent
money?
like a lot of money for a complete basically visual overhaul, and for the net response to be like it looks a little better, not significantly better than last one. It's just like you can tell it looks a little better, and that was tens of millions of dollars.
Meanwhile, like if they'd spent half, if they had split the team in half and like they didn't fully redo everything, they just did the most important elements, and then the other half of the team was working on art for like another project. Maybe we could have gotten more than one Ratchet and Clank this generation. Just a
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, but it's always the in-house AAA game, especially under like a megacorp like Sony, all the politicking and all the like, hey, we'll give you these worse resources. It's like a use it or lose it type of scenario, and then like when you're upper management there, okay, like we have a lot of bunch of resources now, and we want to make the most of it. It's just
It's
it's
really
tough. It's
fascinating
tough.
how like those Expedition 33 panels kind of act as a mirror with that CyberConnect 2 panel because they even said at that like first like audio design Expedition 33 panel that of the core team at Sandfall, it was most of their first project.
Wow,
So
crazy.
it's kind of similar in the vein where it's like it
Yeah.
was a smaller project on paper. Obviously, it took like a couple years longer, but look at Expedition 33, that just makes sense. But yeah, now all of those people at Sandfall that worked on Expedition 33 has Game of the Year under their belt. And that makes me super excited. But man, the pressure for that next game has got to be insane.
Yeah,
Insane.
yeah. Good luck. I mean, they have a lot of very very talented creatives underneath it. It's tried and tested now.
One panel that we didn't get a chance to go to, but was very popular, and I heard a lot about it, was there was a Nintendo panel on Donkey Kong Bonanza talking about the destruction tech and like all the technology going into both the technology and the design about like a 3D platformer that you can basically destroy and reshape the world that you're platforming in. So I heard a lot about that panel. I've seen several articles written about it already. So that was like undoubtedly a very kind of a key panel that a lot of people were going to, was the Bonanza one.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine a lot of people are very curious about like just the technology that fuels like destruction tech in that game, because it was if nothing else, it was one hell of a game for like it definitely gave you those Red Faction, was it Armageddon sort of scenario. Like, man, we have missed this amount of destruction in games.
I was just curious, like outside of the panels and outside of the like what you actually saw like formally sponsored, just this GDC, and it feels like this is true to some extent every year, which is unfortunate. Like there's not a good year for studio layoffs, not a good game year for games media layoffs, not a good year to travel to the US in general. Gestures vaguely. Just like I don't know if there was any like thing you noticed or interacted with in terms of like the vibe, in terms of meeting with other writers, in terms with like meeting old friends or meeting new people on different media staffs. Just like was there anything that felt, I know you've only got the 2 years to compare to, but just on that front, just the experience of being at a convention like this in person within the environment that we're in this year.
I think the longer, like the more persistent problem that GDC is expensive still holds true. Like getting a pass is expensive. You know, just the hotels are expensive. The food is expensive. So just like there's already a barrier to come here if you're a smaller dev with a limited budget, right? Like you want to go to GDC because you can get eyes on it, you can get media and other developers to see your game and to look at your game, but like the cost of just attending money wise is high. And people have said GDC should be somewhere else. It should be in Las Vegas. It should be somewhere where hotels are, 70% the cost and food is half the price, right? Or whatever. So that's still there. But yeah, the whole U.S. political situation I mentioned a while back definitely played a role. So on Wednesday, James and I and a lot of attendees went to the IGF Awards, which is like the indie award section at GDC. In last year, these were like combined. It was like the indie awards and then like the main awards. This year they were split. They had the indie awards on one night, and they kind of had like the GDCA main awards on a separate night. We went to the indie awards. The winner of that award was AP Thompson, who he helped co-develop Consume Me last year, which he covered on our site. It's kind of like a narrative indie RPG about like a adolescent young woman. And then this year he's developing Titanium Court, which is kind of like a puzzle pixel game. It's actually not out yet, but in his in his acceptance speech, he discusses, all of this. And not only that, but there were other winners throughout the night where it was quite literally, I don't remember which game it was specifically, but it was just like a winner is announced. The team comes up on stage, or at least part of the team, and they basically would say, hey, thank you for this award, but I would like to, also shout out my colleague who did not feel safe to come here this year. Like, we won an award at this event, but they could not be here, or they did not feel safe to be here. An actual tangible decision to be made. They would have benefited to come to GDC like professionally, but like, just everything, all the baggage that entails is like, they did not want to do it. They did not feel comfortable. So I linked in our chat, kind of or you can find it online, the AP Thompson's kind of like acceptance speech, and just give it a listen. And for everything I've heard about this person, I'm not very familiar with him, myself, but like apparently like this is a pretty genuine thing that yes, he would believe this. So yeah, that was one of those things that kind of was throughout the event. I mentioned it earlier, just like international non-American developers from countries, especially if they're not white, just like we don't want to go to GDC. Money is its own problem, but yeah. So that was definitely present.
Yeah. No, thanks for, your honest feedback to what you saw there on that front, because we kind of knew going in that that was the vibe, and unfortunately not something that feels like it's going to be course corrected anytime soon.
I mean, I brought this up a few months ago, but even from SGF last year, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, but I told Adam and James, like, the reason why I didn't go out those nights with you guys, there might be Ice who like looks at me and it's like, don't know, you kind of look like an immigrant. I'm like, I don't want to deal with this, you know. So just it's an absurd world we live in right now.
For like final thoughts, you had a few like you've mentioned some of these in passing, like Elden Ring on Switch 2 and a few other things. And I know you're all still working on writing up your final impressions on a few things that you saw. There were a few articles that you wrote up that I think are all related to what you saw at GDC, at Fate's End, Kena Bridge of Spirits, Elden Ring. Were there any other like final thoughts on that, or do we just kind of want to wrap back around next week once you've got them all buttoned up and pushed out?
Yeah, realistically, we didn't play that much at GDC. It was really just a couple of things that I did at Xbox.
Mm.
Obviously, we had appointments, but like the majority of stuff was the Nintendo stuff, and most of those weren't RPGs. Like two of them were, pretty much. But well, three of them because we did cover Kenna. I will say it was interesting that the two people from Ember Labs, I think it's the name
Yeah.
of the company, that were there were the co-founders, the two brothers. So it's like, oh, that says a lot about like how confident they are about the support, that they chose to be the two to showcase it, not publicly, but you know what I mean.
Mm. Well, going away from GDC and going into like the other games we want to talk about this week, it's gonna still stay as I think primarily Adam and James. With I believe Mikhail has also touched on this as well, and that is going into the release of Monster Hunter Stories 3. So this is a review that James put up on the site like right like when you left for GDC or like the day before. I don't remember the exact timing. And then I know that Adam has also played alongside of it as well. So we might just roll straight into that. So Monster Hunter Stories 3, a series that we've covered on the site, obviously as a spin-off, very clearly RPG inspired spin-off to the Monster Hunter series, which we cover anyway. So I'll just dovetail straight into that conversation. I guess I'll start with James, because you wrote the review on the site for Monster Hunter Stories 3. Uh, Impressions for this game, just in general, and from you, have seemed to be very, very positive. So, what are your thoughts on the game?
From a gameplay perspective, it is the best Monster Hunter Stories game. I mentioned it in my preview a few weeks back that I thought that the habitat restoration system and how it kind of ties into the entire gameplay loop is fascinating. I think it's really well designed from a game design perspective, and it really gives you not just a connection to the monsters in your party, but also the environments that you're in, because you have a direct hand in how they evolve and how like different monsters are brought back from the brink of extinction back into their habitat by helping deal with invasive species. And that at its best, I think Stories 3 is genuinely one of the best RPGs I've played from that perspective. I just wish that the way they had sold the story had actually felt like it had come to fruition. And looking at a bunch of the reviews for this game, a lot of folks had the exact same takeaway.
I have
Precisely that
sorry, go finish your thought.
that it, that's a good spot to pause. What was your question?
Yeah, so I'm curious. This is an RE engine game that does have like an open world. And it's been well documented now that the games designed on RE engine struggle with open worlds such as Dragon's Dogma, Monster Hunter Wilds. How's it shaking out for Stories 3?
I would say that it's fine. I do think that if you're on a lower powered like CPU, you're like the highest frame rate that you're going to be able to hit is going to be limited, but it's much better CPU performance than Dragon's Dogma 2 and Monster Hunter Wilds. And more importantly, the frame times are a lot better. So even if you're not hitting as high of a frame rate as like maybe other games you're playing, it's not stuttering. It's not hitching unless you're on Switch 2. So it's a good experience.
Okay.
But Mikhail can speak to why I said except for on Switch 2.
Yeah, so here's one thing which I think is like a general PSA for anyone listening and anyone playing on generally any platform. If you have a demo of a game where your save carries over to the full game, that is 99% how your final game is going to look and run, unless there's like a very rare situation in which the final game actually has changes. I think every game in the last 5 years I've played pre-release, which had a demo with save carrying over, the final game was exactly like that, and that's what happened with Stories 3. Uh, like I've joked with James because like whatever, I think ever since Iceborne, I've been like discussing every Monster Hunter game pre-release with James, and with Stories 2, it felt like a game they designed for Switch 2 in mind because it ran pretty bad on Switch 1, and when you play that now on Switch 2, it's perfect. And with Stories 3 on Switch 2, I've been joking about how it's a Switch 3 game because they've clearly just leave the frame rate uncapped. This is like Capcom's bad habit with everything, and the problem with that is while in Resident Evil 9, which like we spoke about before on a podcast, where that is like a closed game, right? Like how Josh mentioned, RE Engine games have trouble in open areas. Resident Evil 9 kind of hits 60 FPS pretty often on Switch 2 because you're in the closed areas. With Monster Hunter Stories 3, the game just hovers around like 30 to 36 or 35, and it feels awful throughout because it's never stable unless you're like looking into the sky or looking down. And with the unstable performance, it has like bad frame pacing also, so it just feels miserable on Switch 2. And even if you have VRR handheld, like it just is out of that range because they aren't running it in the 120 hertz container, so you're just not getting a good experience docked, you're not getting a good experience handheld, and the visuals are pretty cut back, like image quality wise it's not native res. This like I the speculation and what you'd think is they'd make this for Switch 2 and scale it up everywhere else like they did with Stories 2, because Stories 2 on PC, as much as you can up the resolution and you can up the settings, you're still restricted by a game designed for Switch even in its draw distance and stuff. And I kind of thought that would happen here, but it does not feel like they built this for Switch 2 in mind, because it's pretty compromised, I'd say, on Switch 2. If it had a 30 FPS cap, I would like just be like, yep, go ahead and play it. But right now, it's not great. And since I'm on this, I'll just quickly touch on the comparison I did, because I had access to every version of the game. So I played it on Steam Deck, ROG Ally, PS5, Xbox Series X, and Switch 2, and Switch 2 docked. And this is another thing that confused me. The Switch 2 does not have any graphics or performance mode. You can't even disable the motion blur. On every other platform, you can disable the motion blur, and PS5 and Xbox have not just quality and performance, but a balance mode. So you can have like I put up the frame rates because I measured them for this using VRR and slow motion and stuff. But you actually have like a mode which is like around 40. You have a mode which is around 60. The balance mode is actually like a good 60 FPS experience. And you have a mode which targets 120 FPS, which is meant for VRR. So not only are you like able to scale well above the Switch 2 in resolution, but you can get like up to 4 times the frame rate. And yeah, I'm just like confused at what they've done here. And I just mentioned the uncapped frame rate. That's actually true for the PS5 and Series X versions as well. It's rare for a game where the quality mode is just running at an uncapped frame rate. So if you look at the ground, it'll hit 60. So it's just a confusing release from Capcom. They just assume everyone has VRR, I think, which is not a good assumption. So I put up, like, in addition to like talking about how the game scales and all, I also like usually do recommended settings for Steam Deck and like ROG Ally sometimes, but in this case I actually put up some recommendations for people playing on console also, because if you don't have VRR and you're playing it on PS5, it will not feel good because it hovers around like 65 and stuff here and there. So, and it forcibly like runs in 120 hertz on the console level. So they don't let you change that in game. So what I had to do is go into my PS5 settings, disable 120 hertz mode, then play it in the balance mode. Then I got a like 60 FPS experience, which was smooth. So this is just another bizarre thing which Capcom just like left everything enabled and they're like YOLO, like you take care of it. So this is like one small, like I'd say like one blemish on an otherwise fantastic experience on both PS5 and Series X. But yeah, like the Switch 2, as much like I played maybe 200 hours or 150 hours of Stories 2 on Switch 1. I did not enjoy Stories 3 on Switch 2. Like it feels worse than that. Like, and I played a lot of that. So I hope Capcom patches it, does something to it. It's not great, but there is one thing which I'm a bit confused about. Like when the game launched, I saw a lot of people saying it's been crashing for them on PC,
Heard
and
that too.
I've
Yeah.
played. Yeah, so I've played about, like I haven't finished the game yet on PC or anything yet. I've played like maybe 35 hours across Steam Deck and ROG Ally, and I've had zero crashes. So this might be
Yeah,
an
like
AMD versus Nvidia thing, but like I cannot speak to the tech issues over there except for some traversal stutter loading related. But like I've
Yeah.
had no crashes on any platform.
I've had no crashes on my end, and I like obviously use NVIDIA on my desktop. Haven't had any of the issues there, but also like my handheld is Intel based, which you would expect if anything would have the weird issues, it would be Intel. Because at this point, I don't think it's as much of an issue because they've been working on the drivers for like what 3-4 years now, like dedicated driver and developers are getting more used to it. But it's like I've had no issues there. I've had no issues on my desktop. Like I've seen people reporting like crashes, so it's obviously happening for some people, but I don't know. Adam, did you run into any crashes?
No, really the most significant issue I had was, and it like didn't really bother me much at all, is when you're on top of a mountain, you fly off your monster and you're flying around the area, you could see like the textures and environment like elements popping in, far in the distance, like some like draw distance kind of thing. But I don't that's like even just really a minor quibble, right? So that was about it. No crashes or anything more severe.
But yeah, I just
Speaking,
wanted to bring that up because like a friend of mine, like I remember when Josh said like Resident Evil, a friend of his had issues over there, and that's kind of the situation here because like I've had like a friend told me, how did you not mention crashing in your tech article? And I'm like, because it didn't crash for me, I can't mention it might crash for people, but yeah, like it did crash for my friend, and there are some people saying it. So like if you are planning on getting it, I would absolutely recommend downloading the demo because performance on the demo is exactly the same as the full game.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of the people reporting crashes on the main game have said it never crashed once for me in the demo. So it's like I don't get it. I don't
Okay,
understand.
yeah, but yeah, like that's weird then because like it didn't crash for any of us. But yeah, that's just something to keep in mind because
Maybe
it's not a
it's a
like
Denuvo implementation because they wouldn't have Denuvo in the demo.
no, it
But
would
that
it is in the full game for us at least from what I could
yeah.
tell. So it can't be like I think with Denuvo the maximum issues you might see is you might have some stuttering here and there, like with Capcom's implementation, like they're pretty awful with DRM on PC in general. Like with Resident Evil 4, they even like Digital Foundry even put up a video on how the DRM made the performance worse, which they patched out. But they still have the DRM and Dino Crisis for some reason because screw Jaw Muncher, am I right? But yeah, I think the main thing with Denuvo is it would just be stuttering, not crashing. So just something to keep in mind if someone wants to play it on PC because it's not like a full smooth and stable experience so far at least. And we'll see what happens with the first update whenever that comes out.
Adam, you were talking about this open world traversal, and one of the main features that Stories 3 was marketing is like, hey, you have like this open world traversal now in this game with this whole monsty like mounting system and being able to kind of seamlessly switch out monsties depending on like the terrain, whether it's like flight, land, or sea. Like just in general, like what like the game feel of this game, navigating it. What was your experience like?
It's not too dissimilar from previous games. They all kind of had like zones in some degree, but the game is more or less divided into 4 zones in the game, like 4 world maps, and so like some of your monsters can fly, some of them can climb. So you would like you see walls, and the walls that you can climb are pretty obvious that you can climb them. So like you could switch to a climbing monster. You basically hold a button and then you get like a radial dial, like which of your 6 monsters do you want to, jump on? So you can just like radial rotate over to the monster you want to jump on, climb up a mountain or whatever, and then you can open up that menu again and change back to like a flying monster, and then you can literally just jump off, and you can't like fly. It's like falling with style. Like you can't quite fly higher unless there's like an air gust or something, but you basically glide. Yeah.
It's different from how it worked in Stories 2, where you did unlock full flying.
Eventually, yes, by the end.
Yeah, but this is you don't unlock a full flight in this one, and I actually kind of like that because the level design is very clearly designed around the idea of figuring out how to get from point A to point B using like the air gusts and whatnot. Especially considering like you're searching for like invasive monster dens or feral monsters or all sorts of like just little nooks and crannies for like side quests or stuff like that.
Yeah, like in the desert area, there's the big like crystallized dragon, and there's like the arm of the dragon over off on one side that I saw like there's a treasure chest on that. Now, how do I get up there? Right? And the answer is just basically fly up to the highest point possible and kind of glide over, but it's, you can't just trivially jump and go straight up, fly to it. You actually have to figure out, where's the highest point nearby that you can jump from, glide, and get to it.
It reminds me of, to a certain extent, of like Xenoblade Cross level design.
Okay.
A little bit. Not too much, but just a little bit in terms of like that third map especially kind of gave me those vibes. But
yeah.
One of the big changes that we saw early on when this was revealed, like the story wise, like it seems to be a bit like you touched upon it a little bit, James, when you first were talking about it, but it seems to have like a more serious tone than previous entries. And it seems like it looked like you get a more traditional party throughout the game. Like how did that shake out overall in terms of like the story flow and the ensemble this time around?
The beginning and ending of the game and the middle of the game are 2 entirely different narratives.
Oh, okay, interesting.
That's maybe a little bit reductive, but in practice, that's what it feels like. Like, I actually do genuinely like the ending a decent amount. I think that the way that they bring it together is pretty good, but they just don't really. The through line from point A to point B, they kind of get lost in the middle, like in between point A and point B. They eventually get there, but for like 20 hours, it's like, what are we doing here?
It feels like maybe it's like you're meandering too much, would you say?
Yes, it's like it feels like it feels like the game should have either been shorter or longer, and then spent the longer time to actually like go
making the connected dots make more sense. Okay,
yeah,
I see what you mean. Okay,
yeah, I'm broadly in agreement with that. I do think the ending is pretty strong. And in terms of like presentation, Monster Hunter 2 or Monster Hunter Stories 2 also was a big jump in presentation from the first game, which was originally on 3DS. But like when you get to the credits of this game, you see so many different like animation studios like who are credited behind all the game in the credits, because there's so many animations in this game, whether it's cutscenes or in battle or like the different special attacks or things like that. And so like in terms of pure presentation, it feels like another significant jump from 2 for me. So just like really high quality cutscenes and animations. It feels like, full on JRPG, in terms of like how grandiose it feels, especially at the end. And another part I do want to highlight is, while I don't think, it's all like top notch, having the main character be like a voiced character, I do think helps quite a lot, because like, for example, their relationship with some of the other characters, really all of them, but like Rudy, who is like the mascot, like feline, or Simon, or some of the other characters, like in the previous games, the player character was kind of just like an avatar, a mute They didn't say anything. They just kind of reacted. And it felt like the main character was Navarro, right? He basically did all the talking for you, and you just kind of smiled and did whatever, your main character. But now, since your character is like a fully voiced, real person, like real character, I think that does help with some of the character dynamics in the game, like specifically between like the main character and Rudy, who is the mascot of this game. Like it makes them, I think, both feel a little bit more like a real character versus in the previous games where kind of Navarro is more like kind of a jokey kind of mascot character that it's hard to take seriously. Again, not to say that like the relationships are like top notch, best ever, but I think having the main character be able to bounce off the other characters in the game, I think does help quite a bit in that regard.
And in terms of like just general gameplay, like combat, comparing it from prior entries into this one, because I know some people really didn't jive with previous stories games battle system. Would you say this is a significant improvement or departure in that regard, or just more of a evolution of it?
I think it's definitely an evolution. It's very similar to Stories 2 in terms of the basics of it. It's got, you and your character and your monstie. It has your partner character and their monstie, which they act on their own, more or less. And, I think that's just kind of an interesting wrinkle to these story games is that, like, you have these sort of autonomous party members that kind of act, they do their own thing. They help you out, but you don't have a whole lot of control over them. And that's just how it is. And
It's almost
then
like original Persona 3.
yeah,
on
exactly.
PS2,
But
yeah.
just those two characters, you and your monstie, you can do whatever you want. There are some differences, like for example, in Monster Hunter Stories 2, if I remember correctly, your partner character was basically like decided for you, depending on where you were in the game or which region you were in. Where in this game, you basically get, I think, 5 characters that you can shuffle between whoever you want. Like I want for this battle, like for example, when I did a lot of the post game content, I would be like, oh, I'm going to be fighting this post game monster who is weak to fire. So I'm going to bring with me the princess, the other character whose name I forget. I'm sorry, because her monster, Eleanor, because her monster does fire attacks, right? So you have that choice to make in terms of certain partners or party members do have certain abilities that like they use. So you kind of want to know, okay, which partner would be best suited for this. So you do have like that level of control. There are some fun, like with the invasive monsters. When you first meet the invasive species, it's kind of like more of a puzzle battle versus just normal deplete their HP and don't die type of battle. Where like for example, one of the invasive monsters that's in the first area is a Seregios, who shoots its scales at you, and you kind of have to learn how to survive the battle. Because once he shoots his scales at you, you are pretty much dead. Like, there's no way around it. You can't brute force it. You have to just figure out what are you supposed to do here. And
that remains true when you return, like at the end of the game or post game. If you can fight those invasive monsters and kill and like slay them, and you get like decorations, like overpowered decorations for your trouble, but basically every single invasive monster that you figure out the little gimmick to them, that's like, okay, so that is how you defeat the super boss. It's like every single one of them is an honest to god like RPG super boss that's actually difficult and stresses and tests your knowledge of the battle system and what sort of challenge they're actively engaging you with. It's really neat. I like it.
That's the monster lineup in this game. Like I saw that Malzeno from Rise Sunbreak was there. Like that's a really cool design. I know one of the starting monsters, even from Wilds, I think it was like the frog. I forgot what it's called.
So there is a few Wilds monsters there. You do have what's the name of the Wilds flagship again?
Flagship Arkweld.
Arkfeld, yes. There's Arkfeld, and then there's the little rail Raydao, yeah.
Raydao there? Yeah.
Yeah, Raydao's there.
What about wasn't the Chupacabra also there?
Chupacabra is there, but besides that, I think that's the only. There's just the 3 for Wilds monsters. There's a lot of Rise monsters. There's like almost every deviant monster, which is funny.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
Every Rise flagship that is not Gammoth or Valstrax is there, and I assume Valstrax will eventually come as some sort of DLC.
Oh, I hope so. Valstrak's such a cool monster.
I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, and I don't know where they're from because I haven't played mainline Monster Hunter, but Velkhana and Namael are there.
Oh, okay.
Iceborne and World.
Well, both of them are Iceborne.
Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry, Namiel was the one we couldn't talk about in the review, and then Capcom showed it like 2 days before the embargo. Yeah,
No.
fun.
That was 7 years ago, and you're still having beef about that. That's crazy.
Yeah, they always do that, man.
I
I'll never let it
remember.
go.
I
Capcom's biggest hater.
I remember getting to Zenogre and Iceborne's like post game, and then they announced Zenogre, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Remember when you found Espinas in the loading screen when we were playing Sunbreak and they had shown it?
Yeah. No,
Oh,
I
good
remember it was like, I think the funny thing is it was like, wait a second, I think I recognize that monster because I thought it was either I noticed Espinas or I noticed like Gormagala, and I went to go check. No, it was like I noticed Gormagala. I went to check my recording, and I was like, wait a second, that's Espinas. It's like, what the fuck?
I feel like I know the answer to this already, but I have to know: is my big beautiful shark boy Zamtrios in this?
No.
Nope.
Of course not.
They were in the previous one, so they just decided not to bring
Yeah,
them over.
I know. Oh,
Moogie's back,
I
though.
miss
Well,
Zamtrios.
good news, Josh. Good news.
Okay.
Zamtrios isn't there, but you know who is back?
Uh, the fucked up. What's it? The owl that reverses your control.
No. Unfortunately, they're not in there, but
Oh.
Nibblesnarf is in there.
Oh, sweet. Double Starve is a funny creature.
And Plesiot.
Yeah.
Hell yeah! How's the hip check?
They have an attack that makes fun of the whole fucking like hip check nonsense.
Nice. Yeah, I saw a fun Yan Kutku animation where like it's charging the monster and like the camera does like the camera's like right in front of its face and does like that whole fish lens thing that makes it look really funny. Seems like
Yeah.
there's a lot of like funny just link attack animations in it. I
Yep.
just saw the training montage for what was the monster that have the training montage throughout the stories games? I'm glad they still do that.
Brachydios.
Yeah, the Brachydios.
Yeah, game's good. Story, unfortunately, as it has been the case, the stories and the Monster Hunter Stories games have been the least valid reason to play them, which is a shame.
It's cool that they continued like the whole series though. Like the stories games are like a nice fun like spin-off departure to it, and it's cool to see that as every like new entry comes out, it just gets like better and better. They clearly care about it.
Yeah, and it's like it's worth noting that this like those credits were long as hell. Obviously, the production values for this are like this may be like the maybe not the most, but like the top one of the top 5 most like expensive JRPG. Just in
Fair.
terms of like the actual
Oh.
budget that they put into it. Like
Wow.
I don't think that is out of the question whatsoever.
Insane. Yeah, that's Capcom is just they just have a regular cadence of releases. You had Resident Evil just recently, now this, then Pragmata.
You
Is
missed
around the
forgot
corner.
Mega
Evil,
Man.
I made it.
Me-
Yeah, speaking of Resident
Mega
Evil,
Man.
I made a joke last night where it's like it's kind of weird how like Eleanor and Grace both look very similar because like they're both like white women with very similar hairstyles, and they didn't cross promote by giving each other their outfits.
That's true.
It feels like that would have been obvious. I don't know.
Don't worry, the Capcom director will pull a slideshow. It's probably with some more upcoming things.
I kind of wish there was like a fun like a crossover like content of like Grace trying to like run away or sneak past like a Monster Hunter monster and being scared out of her mind doing it.
Yeah.
Thank you, James and Adam and Mikhail, for going into detail on Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection. So, of course, James has the review up on the site, as well as the kind of the performance feature from Mikhail. All right, I think it's been a while since we've gone to a third game. But for the third game for the podcast, this is the rare game that I get to lead the discussion on. Another game that just released within the last week. So this game is a game that's been in early access since mid to late 2024. This is Greedfall: The Dying World. So I know Adam and I believe, are the ones that played Greedfall in 2019. It was an RPG from French studio Spiders. They also made games like The Technomancer and Bound by Flame. Typically games that don't they're not super well received. They're games that kind of fall into like the 60s and 70s on Metacritic for whatever weight you assign that. But Greedfall, I felt like, and Adam, I think you're on the same boat as me, is that it wasn't an amazing game, but it was a solid game. It was a good game. It was an optimistic or promising game that felt like, hey, maybe this is a studio that's getting their legs under them. Greedfall, the original, was a sort of game that a lot of other Western studios had started to move away from. It released 4 years after Inquisition.
It released like half a year after Anthem. So
Yeah. So it was after It was like 4 years after Inquisition. I think Andromeda had come out to like tepid, reception 2 years prior. It was a sort of Western RPG that, Obsidian, BioWare, Bethesda had seemed to kind of like divest from in some ways to some extent. Um, and it was a good game. It was a solid game, and it had a lot of promise. So the idea of following up on that, like, hey, that's something that I think we should keep an eye on. Unfortunately, since the release of Greedfall, a lot of things happened. Um, Greedfall, or the studio Spiders, even before Greedfall released, got fully acquired by Big Ben Interactive. They had previously worked almost entirely with, at the time, like Focus Home Entertainment, now Focus Interactive, who remained as the publisher for Greedfall, and I believe pretty much all of Spiders' other games, or at least the vast majority of them. Big Ben is still around in some form, but they're primarily known now in their publishing division as Nason or Nason
I
or
think it's
Nacon.
NACON.
Uh,
Think of it like a horse convention.
Nacon, which is a studio that has, in my experience, especially even doing some research for this review, a very poor reputation for several reasons. Do you guys remember a few years ago when the Sinking City was like pirated from the developer and put on Steam without their consent? And
I just
basically the developer
screenshot.
said, don't support this release. We didn't agree to this. That publisher was Nacon. Like, that's who we're talking about here. They also had like disagreements with like not paying out milestones. There are lots of I don't know, notches against them. They were supposed to have their yearly like direct thing, and they have like F1, and like they don't have like a huge overlap with their publishing like titles with us. Like Spiders really is like the one point of, connective tissue that we have with their portfolio. They were gonna have their like yearly direct, but they canceled it like the day before it was supposed to air, or I guess they delayed it to May. They also, within like the same week, filed for insolvency. Uh, so basically they are not able to pay on their debts. It's not a good situation. And then this is the situation that Greedfall: The Dying World, the game I'm trying to speak to and really preambling into, is releasing under. Um, and then about Spiders specifically, in 2024 and 2025, uh, the French video game union, SJTV, it's a French term. Le Syndicat de Travailleurs de Jeux Video. Sorry that my French is terrible, but basically a video game workers union basically says like, hey, the Spiders' morale at that studio has deteriorated significantly. Not only do they have layoffs, but they have like people voluntarily like leaving the studio and positions not being backfilled. Like it's just total brain drain in terms of like in a response to an inquiry from us, they said that a fourth of the workers have left the company since 2025, like either through layoffs or through voluntarily leaving and those positions not being backfilled.
And also, the founder of the company, Jehan Rousseau, who is like the CEO of Spiders, the founder of Spiders, and has basically been involved with everything they've done, first stepped down as CEO and then left the company entirely. Like, I don't want to speculate exactly why or what that means. They are still the creative director on Greedfall and Greedfall: The Dying World, but now in like sort of a freelance sense. Like, she is still the creative director for this game, and she's done, interviews and whatever with the game, but she is not. She's the founder of the studio. She is no longer an employee of the studio. So, that's weird.
So about the game proper, and the way I kind of framed my review was, I'd love to tell you that despite all of this, that it was a resilient, testament to the people who remained, or that they overcame the odds. And the answer really is it didn't do that. This game is not as good a game as the first, and the first game wasn't amazing. It was merely above average, in my opinion. So Greedfall: The Dying World released in early access at the time Greedfall 2. I might call it Greedfall 2 occasionally just as a shorthand, even though that 2 was dropped from the title. To very kind of mixed to negative response, primarily due to the way that the combat system changed. Interestingly enough, that was probably like the least of my concerns. So Greedfall 1, the high level premise of both of these games is that it is very clearly inspired by like 1600s colonialization of North America by European forces. Like in general, that's very clearly the visual design, the story design, the characters. That's the inspiration here. And on Greedfall 1, there was a lot of ways that they could have fumbled that premise, but I actually think, and I'm not a historical authority, that they did pretty well, avoiding like the terrible tropes they could have leaned into to tell a pretty like sinister story. They didn't do that. Greedfall 2, I think, also has a decent story. But the combat system specifically, Greedfall 1 was very much like an over-the-shoulder, Mass Effect-ish action RPG system. It wasn't great. It was fine. It was what it was. You'd have like a hotbar. You'd have your two party members that you could like issue basic commands to. You would have like enemies that have different armor levels and different skills with like, and I'm not here to describe the combat of Greedfall 1, but it was a fine combat system. It was okay. It had room for improvement, but it wasn't terrible. Greedfall 2 kind of scrapped that entirely. There I went. I called it Greedfall 2. I might just call it Greedfall 2 for shorthand. To something that's very clearly more real time with pause. A lot of comparisons have been drawn to games like Dragon Age Origins or Knights of the Republic or honestly Xenoblade, in terms of your attack, your basic attack is like it's on an interval and it connects automatically as long as you're close enough to your enemy. You have skills on the bottom of your bar. Some of these are like buffs. Some of these will target an area. Some of them will target a very specific enemy. In order to in order to perform any skill, you have to both have to have the skill off cooldown and you have to have enough resource, in this case AP, to cast it. So it's kind of like maintaining all those resources at once. And then if you pause the game, you can issue specific commands for them to queue up and engage in order. So you can micromanage to a pretty high extent if you want to. Um, you There is like a mode in the game where it's called like autonomous party, where the party will just kind of do like a very typical like focus on my target or use your skills but not any items. This is stuff that's kind of pretty well worn. Like they can self agency for to some extent. And if you're playing on an easier difficulty, that's almost certainly fine. But I'm the sort of person where I looked at the reception to the game in early access, and not all, but a good chunk of the negative reception was due to the complete change of the combat system. But I looked at that and I was like, oh, maybe like maybe this is something that I will not. I like real time with pause. I have no issue with this combat system. I actually played the game on its hardest difficulty and really had no issues like getting the game to do what I wanted. So therefore, if that was the main concern of the game in early access, maybe I had a good time with it. And the answer is like, unfortunately, not really. So the combat system, if you're a fan of real time with pause, you'll be okay with it. If you're not a fan, it's going to be very player dependent. Like if you like action based combat and you tried playing Knights of the Old Republic and you didn't like how it felt automated or it felt kind of quasi turn based, that's what this game feels like. So if you don't like that, you're not going to like this game. But even if you do like the combat, you still might not like this game, unfortunately. So this game is positioned inverted compared to the first, where you play as a native character of the island, Tirfredi, a very, very clear analog to like Native Americans from the Western Hemisphere, and you are taken, effectively abducted, to go to the mainland. The mainland is where your character came from in the original game, and the other protagonist. While you're there, you're basically, it's a prequel to the first game. in terms of like they are just now trying to learn like who these islanders are, what their beliefs are, and a lot of people do not care for you. There's almost like a lot of cartoonish level bigotry. Like there's certain people that are like, I respect you completely. And then there's certain characters who are like, you're a native, therefore I don't care one iota what you are or who you think you are or your beliefs or anything. And that almost feels like where this game stumbles, I think, is that there's really no nuance. Uh, in the first game, because it took place on the island, you got to meet a lot of different tribes, a lot of different beliefs. Some were very trusting of the colonials. Some were very distrustful. Some had good motivations. Some had very like self-interested motivations. There was a lot of shades of gray. There were party members that believed different things. It felt like there was a lot of care and consideration. That's something that I do think is deeply missing from the dying world, is that every character is either on your side or a complete bigot. Like there's no shades of gray, which makes the story a lot less interesting. Villains are very clearly villainous, allies are very clearly allies. There's no, no there's nothing else to dive into. It's only skin deep. Uh I also think where the game struggles is that once you're on the mainland, just like the first game, there are several different factions at play, and very clearly, like in the menu, they call them factions through different countries. And you could argue that certain countries have different analogs in like Western European history. I don't know if that was intentional or if that's just archetype. Like one is a very like monotheistic religious order. One is like a congregation of merchants. One is an alliance of a bunch of smaller countries, maybe an analogy to like the Holy Roman Empire, modern day Germany, things like that. So you could think like, oh, you could see maybe we can kind of get a different flavor of what we got from the first game with the different native tribes, only they're different, like quote unquote Western civilizations. But they don't really do that. And here's the reason: like the game takes place only in like three different cities. And usually your only interaction with characters from these different countries are basically embassies or ambassadors, or they're visiting the city that's owned by a certain country, but they're representing another country. So you kind of have like a proxy for each different faction. So it's very much like if the proxy's on your side, that faction likes you. If the proxy's not on your side, that faction doesn't like you. And it just feels like very black and white, not a lot of nuance. The same criticisms that I levied before with the characters themselves. They talk about like a war between the factions, but since you're not at any of those places directly, you don't see it. Like it's all like, believe me, it's off screen, like just off screen. There's two factions are at war, and it's been going on for a long time, and there's a lot of strife. But you're not going to see any of that because we didn't have the time to animate
Does
any
the
cutscenes
game
for it.
feel unfinished? Like you talked about all the struggles with the studio and the publisher earlier. Does this feel like we just have to get it out and they just slapped a 1.0 release date and just pushed it like stumbling over the finish line? Does it feel unfinished?
In some small ways, yes. Like it's not like um the it's not like the story runs out of road, like it just clearly ends like before anything resolves. Like I think of like it's a completely different style of game, but Deus Ex Human Revolution 2, Mankind Divided, where that game just kind of like ends
Yep.
like randomly, okay, it's over. This game is not like that. This game does have an ending, but where it feels unfinished is the sense where it's like um whenever your characters have to like talk about areas in their homelands or their own personal struggles, because the other characters, you have like a cast of like 6 or 7 party members, and they each have like 3 different personal quests, but every single quest just takes place in this small world space that you're given, and it almost feels like that wasn't always the intent. Like you're just revisiting kind of like the same places over and over again. It's more like a Dragon Age 2 in that sense, where it's a lot of reused locations, or if it's not a reused location, it's a location that looks very similar to another location. Um, Here's one specific example where one of the characters that you meet from a country called Dutan, the character's name is Ludwig. Basically, he's at a relation's house and they own a farm, but their farm is struggling. They talked about how they can't repay a loan, etc. That they need some help on their farm. And this is just a small story. The story premise is fine. But then the character says, like, I've got some supplies tucked away. I'm like, wait, really? You have farming supplies tucked away? It just feels like a very convenient, like, resolution to a problem. Like, oh, okay, I guess we'll go get them. Like, it just seems like they come up with like a premise for a story, and then like, oh crap, now we got to resolve this. Well, what can we do with our limited world space? Like, they have a map that's very very small, and it's like, oh, okay, let's just hand wave that. Don't worry about it. And I feel like that's sort of thing that the game does pretty often. There's a lot of quests and events that refer to like past events where, oh, this character we thought we're going to snoop around for evidence of this character's wrongdoing to frame them or to have them stand trial, but you don't see any of the conflict. You're just like snooping around their house looking for like letters and documents that indicate wrongdoing, and you do this a lot. This game has like Witcher senses, so to speak, which I feel like most games that have that sort of detective mode, Witcher senses, whatever you call it, whenever a game implements that, for most of the time, my enjoyment goes down because it just feels like you toggle into that mode and you look for whatever highlight tells you what's important, and you go to it and you click it, and then you move on from there. And the character will mutter to themselves like, "Oh, looks like there was a struggle," or "Oh, they broke through the lock. That means they must have had iron tools. This couldn't have been a native," or things like that. But you don't see any of the conflict. You always are like playing forensics after the fact. So in the way that this game feels unfinished, it feels like they created like a map, and the cities in this game are pretty well realized, but they're very static. Everything like either happens off screen or happened prior to you getting there. You don't see any, like, the number of cutscenes in this game is pretty low. And I know like in a vacuum that might sound like, well, who cares? Like I'm not here to watch cutscenes, but it just feels like the world is very static. That's what it contributes to. And in that way the game feels unfinished. There
Makes
is
sense.
one character who joins your party that has no character quests, and I didn't know that. Like going through, I'm like, how come this guy won't give me any quests? Every other character is like the cartographer, who is Safia, or the exile, who is Fosta. Like these are different characters, and they have like their own sub menu in the journal. I'm like, okay, so this guy named Till, he's a coin guard. Like, where's his quest? Turns out he just doesn't have any. Like, I don't know if he was a late addition. He's not treated any differently otherwise, but he just doesn't get quests. Don't ask questions. So that, I guess, in a way, does feel very unfinished. Also, technically, this game is a mess. And the first game
Oh.
wasn't great, so I'm not sure that's a big surprise. I crashed like 5 times. Textures on high or ultimate didn't want to load in half the time. So either they were very muddy, or occasionally they just didn't appear at all. So a character would literally be floating limbs, like very bad stuff. Like not nitpicking, like this is a very bad look. So I'm the sort of person who is usually relatively, I don't want to say insensitive to that, but for some people I could see that being like that's a deal breaker. I'm gonna Alt F4 and delete this from my hard drive right away. Like, all right, this is an unfinished game. In that sense, it's very, very poorly s- framed on a technical standing. Um, I I was hoping maybe there'd be a day one patch or something, but no. As far as I can tell, it's not been patched. Uh, it sounds like some of these issues might be hardware dependent, or driver dependent. But I couldn't find any clear evidence of what was causing it.
I remember watching you were streaming the game in our channel, and I was watching it, pre-release, and it was the type of thing where I'd see like a broom like sweeping, you know,
Yep.
outside a building, and literally for like, I'm being quite serious, like it felt like 15 full seconds, just the broom just sweeping. Like it almost felt like Hogwarts or something magical, just like a moving broom, and then finally like the NPC pops in holding it. Like that's pretty bad.
Yep. It's pretty bad. Yeah, it's pretty bad. And there's really no excuse for it. Like it's not like, but believe me, that's just cosmetic. Don't worry about it. But like, no, it really is like frustrating. It impacts your enjoyment. Um yeah. So like I still scored this game a 6, like not a 3, and the score really doesn't matter too much, like a number. Like there were certain things about it that I thought were okay. Like I thought the combat was fine. I thought the build craft was fine. I thought like the itemization, the skills, the talents, all of those kind of are similar to how they were in the first game. Like in terms of like a number crunching RPG, this game actually has a lot of things to like in terms of like boons and buffs and positioning in battle and coming up with strategies or party composition or even like skill checks, like certain characters. Like this is one thing they brought from the first game, which I think really works well, is that you have different talents. These talents are like craftsmanship or mechanisms or stealth or diplomacy. and characters like other party members will bolster your ability to do these talents. So even if you're not good at diplomacy, you don't put points in diplomacy, you might bring in a party member who is good at that, and that bolsters your ability to pass those checks. So I think that the talent list is pretty different from the first game, but the mechanism is still the same. And I think that system's actually really neat because you can kind of like specialize in one thing, and that means so and so who specializes in another thing becomes your BFF and has them in your party. Like, oh, I'm terrible at survival, but this character's got +2 survival. And as you build your reputation with them, their support gets better. So it's in terms of like design of a game, it works pretty well. And it very clearly shows that Spiders has been doing this for like 18 years. It's just the execution is honestly like very, very bad. Um, and this is a game that's like all substance, no style, where the underworkings are fine, but the story doesn't hook you. The technical issues are if they're not inexcusable, they're right at the hairy edge. Um, Even like the antagonist of this game, this was not a comparison I was planning to make going in, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The antagonist of this game, I'm not gonna give away, like, story spoilers, but he reminds me a little bit of Vayne Solidor from Final Fantasy XII in terms of, like, he's framed as the antagonist. Early on in the game, he's clearly pitted against the party, but then he kinda takes a back seat for, like, 20 hours, and you don't forget about him completely, but you just kinda have to assume that they are pulling the strings or that they're somehow at play in terms of the conflict that you're struggling with. And then by the time the game circles back around to them at the very end, you're like, "Oh yeah, this guy. I guess we never did take care of him." And even like the final climax is kind of similar. So like, oh, and Vayne Solidor is I think a charismatic character, but probably wasn't. In my opinion, he was underutilized in that game. Uh, this character is not the antagonist is named Kernaz. Um, his motivations are very one note. He's like, I want to utilize the magic abilities of the natives, but also I want to eradicate them by infecting them with diseases that they have no resistance to. Like it's very much like I'm a villain stapled on his forehead. Like no, there's no like which can work like Luca Blight or whatever, but like
Theo.
in this case it didn't really work. It's he wasn't charismatic enough for that like super villain bad guy 101 to carry it. So this game, if you're a fan of the first game and you really are into the world building and the lore of that, and the first game didn't set the world on fire,
It
but
was a big success for
this
Spiders, like, and Focus
it
at
was
the
like 2
time.
million copies sold.
Yeah.
Like that's as many copies sold as Rebirth, ballpark, like sort of thing. Like it's like it did pretty well for them. And that's why after I finished, I guess this is my final statement. After I finished Greedfall, the first game, it wasn't an amazing game. It's not like top 10 of 2019 or anything like that, but it made me optimistic. Like, oh, maybe this is the start of something great. When I finished the second game, I'm like the opposite, where it's like, nope, apparently it wasn't. Apparently that might have been the high watermark, and this is not as good. So I'm like, I don't want Spiders to fail, but it makes me genuinely worried, like that they're bleeding talent, that they're under a publisher that has many notches against them, and I don't think like if you look at consecutive sales or whatever on Steam, like this game has not been received well. It's almost certainly going to sell less. It just makes me really like what a bummer. That's kind of like my final closing
You
statement.
touched on this already, but I think the decision to go with the more like Dragon Age Origins, more like nerdy, like combat style, felt like the wrong decision, even outside of the technical issues and even like development issues. Greedfall had, kind of a relatively broad audience who liked, the characters and, kind of the over the shoulder, easy Mass Effect kind of combat. And then like as soon as they decided this one's going to be more like almost old school, that's such a drastic change. Um, that the game would have to like make up for it. It'd have to be like really exciting or really, high production or whatever to, adjust for that decision to go for that more real time with pause style. And so I don't know. It's kind of like bad. I almost feel like bad premise and bad execution. It's like, I don't know. That's
And in some of their FAQs, they try to answer like why they did that, and none of the things that I've seen have really like felt convincing. They're like, "Well, we got some feedback on the first game that people wanted to control the other characters, and this gives them the opportunity to do that." And the answer is like, kind of. Like, in battle, if you press pause, you can click another character and then you can control their hotbar. Like, true, but then out of battle, it's just gonna push you back to the protagonist. But and like, it is true in a sense that, yeah, you do get slightly more control of your other characters, but why does that necessitate the shift of all the other aspects of the combat system? I don't quite see that. And it's not like the sort of game where it's like, oh well, look, the combat's not great, but just play on easy and enjoy the story. It's like, well, play on easy and tolerate the story, I suppose, because even that's not, not the high watermark. But yeah, it's a game I wish was better. There were still things that I enjoyed from it, but not can't really shout any like strong praises for it. It is what it is.
And I know that Steam concurrents get a lot of criticism, but just I think this difference is so stark that it's worth mentioning. It is a data point. GreedFall 1, the first GreedFall, had 16,000 characters or players at its peak, when it released. And it has about 300 playing right now. GreedFall 1. GreedFall 2, or Dying World, has about 900 right now. Like
So, like, more
900
than
900
yeah.
compared to 16,000. Like,
Yeah.
and that was
Big drop
years
off.
ago. So like, that's a big difference, right?
The
Yeah.
Steam player base is more now, and yeah, if it was like trying to compare two things that were like 10, 20, even 30% apart, you'd be like, yeah, well, it's apples to oranges. The situations are different, but now it's when it's like over and over to magnitude, you're like, oh, something happened here. Yeah, unfortunate. So yeah, my review's up on the site, and I tend to be more eloquent in writing than I am in voice. So if I said anything that felt weird, go ahead and give that a review. I worked pretty hard on it, or give it a read. Game I wish was better. There are still things you can enjoy about it, but it's a game that feels unfinished in small ways. It's a game that is a technical mess, and it's not as good as the first game. If you haven't played the first game, I have a review on that too. So go ahead and check that out. It's a fun throwback to like Western RPGs from like the mid 2010s. All right, I think that covers us for games we wanted to talk about. But related to that, though, I'm looking at the article shoutouts that we have here before we go into news, and a lot of these we've already touched on, like GreedFall we just did, Monster Hunter Stories, some of the things from GDC that Adam and James talked about. There is a preview here that Josh took the lead on, and this is for a game called Stupid Never Dies. You had an article about this that just went up like a couple days ago at the time of recording. So Josh, here's your chance just to speak to Stupid Never Dies. And this is it's not a game I know much about. So tee me up on what this is and what your thoughts were on it.
Yeah, this was first unveiled during the Game Awards last year. There's like obviously an avalanche of game announcements and news and stuff. So this is one of those that people might have forgotten, but it was like this catchy teaser trailer with a interesting art style and like music associated with it. But this comes from a new developer called GP Track 50. And it's one of those studios that got established back in late 2022 by NetEase Games and led by Capcom producer Hiroyuki Kobayashi. And he oversaw and produced a lot of Capcom's games for like the year 2000 to 2016, such as Resident Evil 4, the first Dragon's Dogma, Sengoku Basara, especially he was very involved in, and then a lot of the film and anime adaptations those IPs received, whether it's like the CG Resident Evil films or the Sengoku Basara anime adaptation, and such. So at the time when I attended this preview event, the news didn't break out yet that NetEase Games was going to stop funding the Goshi Studio in May, and there was word that there was other Japanese-led, like a veteran-led studios that they established was also being affected. Though there was no hard confirmation that GP Track 50 was, but it's like one of those things that hindsight is 2020. Now that I'm like releasing this preview, now that news broke, that's like hopefully that this game is able to come out and be successful in a way that hopefully that this studio under NetEase Games doesn't dissolve in many ways that otherwise other studios did, like Oka Studios for Visions of Mana, when they publicized that new developer got shut down on the day that Visions of Mana came out, which is like, man, that still fucks me up. But yeah, this is a really interesting, like a third person action RPG. It is run based. And the you take control of a zombie named Davy, and he kind of falls in love with this first sight on the corpse of this woman in a freezer of an ice cream shop. That's the setup, and he wants to resurrect this woman, and in order to do that, he has to go defeat the King of Monsters, KOM, as they abbreviate it, and he
Just in case, gonna sue.
um so he kind of gets like these special powers that allows him to, whenever he consumes an enemy, he can shift into one of 10 different forms, 11 if you count as zombie form, the zombie style, which is always available as default. And when he does these runs into the dungeon, he can has a lot of this presentation was revolving around these different forms. So it's, think Altered Beast, think of other games of the sort where you can transform to different creatures that all have different abilities. And I was like, oh, they're going to show off a few of these forms here, and then maybe show off more at a later date. It's like, no, they showed off pretty all the different forms that you can turn into in this one. Like different fantasy creatures, like a werewolf, a harpy, a golem, but like a vampire. But even like some unique ones like a snow fairy and a merfolk. And it was really cool to see them kind of gradually build up the mechanics and like how these different creatures vary from one another. Like the werewolf, it's like a speed-based style that is very much you are attacking relentlessly with their melee claws, and you can do a triangle jump like off of walls, kind of get greater height into an aerial-based attack. Harpy can glide around and attack the projectiles, and the vampire can obviously kind of can attack with swarms of bats and can do life leech, sucking up the energy of like nearby things that you bite. But then there's like even like it gets into more less basic, more advanced forms of like properties of these fantasy creatures, like Will-o'-the-Wisp, like Davy turns into like a corporeal, ethereal sort of being. And so, since he doesn't have a physical body in Will-o'-the-Wisp, he's invulnerable to many types of like physical attacks coming his way. And since he floats in that style, if there's any like ground traps, he can just float over them because he's not touching the ground. He's just floating around. And then like the snow fairy style, which is really interesting because the snow fairy has the ability to attack with like an ice sword, but you can enhance this ice sword by freezing enemies and then shattering them, and then that absorbs their energy, which further increases the size and effectiveness of this like ice sword attack with the snow fairy. And the merfolk can dive into the ground as for water and like reemerge and attack enemies like that. So that's kind of the like what a lot of what we saw was. There was also like this mechanic called body hack, where you can transform as you're equipping different kinds of gear. Equipping them like transforms different body parts of Davy. So like his left arm can like hold up like this broadsword, for example, and so his whole arm transforms into like this whole broadsword that can like unleash abilities on enemies. Some of them are like missile pods. It's all very slick action. Like there's even like a combo meter, sort of like Devil May Cry, that ranks up in grades. And it showed in the screenshots like drop percent up. So I'm not exactly sure like what the real benefit is in like grading up and raising what the drop percentage of what. Like they were very laser focused on the gameplay, the moment the gameplay of this, and then the overall larger structure of the game was to be discussed at a later point in time. Though they did share like, because it's a run based game, subsequent runs that you go into, you level up faster and faster. Like I think one of the taglines in like the initial release of this game was like it's a blazing growth fast action RPG or something like that. So eventually, like once you're in your like fifth or sixth dungeon dive, your level ups are going to come much, 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 much faster than like your first two runs into it. Though what that entails, though, reveal at a later time. You also have this like sort of like special mode called like the Davy Burst, which they compared to like being in the like consuming a star in the Mario games. Though it does have like an acid trippy visual aesthetic to it, where I compared like some of like the little emoticons and emojis you see in Davy's imagination during this mode to sort of like the 90s style Nickelodeon's cartoon sort of faces that you have over like enemies, which is like a nice little touch. So overall, if you want to kind of get a feel of the game and what I saw, go read my preview, and I also linked to the the new gameplay trailer that they unveiled at the Future Game Show event that they had earlier this week. It's a really like promising looking game that has like a lot of really wild like expressions of like artistic expression behind it. Very cool, almost like colorful punk aesthetic to it, especially like but each of like your different forms, like even creatures, like all of them in some way, shape, or form still has like Davy's baseball cap and like his like jacket like rolled up, on them in some way, shape, or form, which is a fun, neat kind of design quirk I like on that. And they haven't confirmed like a hard release date yet. It's sometime releasing sometime out this year for PS5 and PC. And that's kind of the gist of what I got to see. I think it's a really really neat looking game that I want to check out for its full release. But I really hope that the internal politics of what NetEase Games is doing doesn't affect this game and that studio. They are
Yeah.
clearly very passionate about it. Kobayashi-san and all the developers behind that. He was discussing about like the benefits of working with a smaller team and being able to like implement features faster into the game than not having to like go through so much red tape like in uh, bigger companies. The flow of communication is much easier with a smaller team, obviously, than working for like a AAA studio in that. So it's a neat looking game. Stupid never dies. I hope I hope it comes out in a state that they were able to to their satisfaction with very minimal NetEase games finagling. Let's say.
Yeah. So Josh does have the article up on the site for Stupid Never Dies, up on the site at rpgsite.net. Go ahead and check it out. It's slated to release at some point this year. Last feature I have, I hope I'm not skipping anything incidentally, is another pretty awesome interview that Mikhail was able to put up on the site for us. This is for an interview with the composer Inon Zur, who has done work for Starfield, also other Bethesda games like Fallout 76, Fallout 6, Fallout 4, also games like Dragon Age 2, as well as, I didn't know this one, Rise of the Ronin. I didn't realize he had worked on that.
Yep.
Mikhail, just take it away. Your opportunity to ask some questions to Inon Zur and what you were able to get out of your opportunity to speak with him.
I was planning on doing this in, I feel like it was early January or something when I got in touch with the PR, and with schedules and time zones and stuff, it finally happened in February. And because I was like figuring out when to publish it, and we already had interviews up the week prior to this week, so it just so happened to be going up like what's now a week before Bethesda said they're going to talk about Starfield, because the interview kind of like exploded. Like, I'll get to the topics I covered, but there was like one main quote from it which is like kind of gone viral, and that led to like the official Bethesda Game Studios account like replying to PC Gamer, which was quoting our interview, which basically was just like just laughed at the Bethesda quote from the thing. Which let me just bring up the exact quote because I don't want to. Yeah, so Bethesda said the quote was Starfield will become something legendary, something like that. So the reply from Bethesda was, we ran this by Todd and he said his only visionary power is seeing running lanes in EA College Football 26. He appreciates all the passionate feedback on Starfield and we'll have more to share next week. So I guess they will be talking about it next week, but the timing was just, it ended up being a coincidence because this was ready for quite a while now, the interview. So yeah, as for what I got to talk to him about, I didn't have much time. Like usually these interviews are about an hour maximum, but I had like just over 30 minutes here. So I could only focus on Starfield, Fallouts for like his compositions, how he approaches music and stuff. But I did get to ask about Rise of the Ronin because like Rise of the Ronin and Starfield are my favorite soundtracks he's done, so I wanted to cover those. So just talking about his like how Team Ninja and Sony contacted him for, they wanted a more western orchestral take for Rise of the Ronin, but he ended up learning traditional Japanese scales, modes and instruments, and while it wasn't something they asked for, they were happy with the soundtrack in the end. And with Starfield, how he was like working with Todd Howard back and forth, and he was like, Todd Howard is a visionary. He sees things people won't realize later until later and stuff like that. And from that specific question, when I asked about Starfield, is that the quote which has gone viral, and like a lot of websites are quoting it. And I think it makes sense for them to do that because there's been a lot of murmur around what's happening next with Starfield. Like the one of those reliable leakers in Europe who post retail listings has said that Starfield is going to come to PS5 like in early April or something like that. So I think with the like Starfield is just in the news again because of this. And yeah, so it was funny seeing that bit quoted. But there's one thing which, when I was doing research on what else he's worked on besides the stuff I know of, I found out he did music for some Digimon movies, which was like quite surprising.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so when Fox, like one of the Fox networks was handling Power Rangers and Digimon, and he said there were five of us composing at that time under Fox over there, and you just did what you were told, and then they were like, oh, here's an episode that your music might fit, and you just said yup, and you went ahead with it. And that's how he ended up working on the English versions of some Digimon movies. So yeah, just doing a lot of that stuff and talking about, like in one of the other interviews he's done on YouTube, I forgot exactly which channel. He was like, if I wasn't composing music, I'd just be on a farm taking care of animals. And then I asked him, do you still want to do that? And he said, yeah, the older I get, I think I'm coming closer to that. And yeah, just talking about what else he'd like to do and stuff like that. I was very happy with it because I enjoy talking to musicians and composers. So it's just funny that the timing ended up being very close to the quote unquote rumors for what's happening with Starfield next. So yeah, that was
Yeah,
basically
it almost
the
feels like
interview.
Starfield PS4 marketing, or sorry, PS5 marketing at this point. But that's not what it was. Like you said,
Yeah,
this was already like in the can
yeah,
well
yeah.
before any of those came up. But yeah, a really cool
I did
interview with
ask
Inon
about.
Zur on the site.
Thank you.
You
I
guys.
did ask about like because even I'm curious what's happening with Starfield. I haven't played the Shattered Space expansion because I heard it was a little rough and people said wait for patches. I did play the game and I enjoyed the game despite 4,000 loading screens, but I just thought I'd wait for fixes or whatever, and that never came. So now I was like, if they do a new expansion, like obviously, you're not gonna get an answer from NDAs and stuff. But I was talking to him, so I was like, like, are you gonna do more stuff for Starfield? And he just gave a diplomatic answer and said, I can't comment on it, but there's always stuff to look forward to or something like that. So hopefully, if they do new DLC, he is working on it because he works pretty closely with Bethesda, like with Fallout 76, Elder Scrolls Blades and stuff, like you said. So yeah, give the interview a read if you like that. So yeah.
With that, we'll go into news. Not a lot of news this week, but that actually worked out pretty well because we had a GDC and reviews to follow up on, in no particular order. So this is what I got listed for this week. This is one that I saw this headline, and to me, it feels like a pretty momentous thing, but maybe I don't have quite the authority to speak to it. But this is a Nihon Falcom announcement. They've announced that a new Dragon Slayer project is in the works to celebrate the 45th anniversary of Dragon Slayer, which released in 1984. And has not had an entry in that series for decades. So Adam, or maybe Josh, like, have you played like some of these games from the original Dragon Slayer series, like from the late '80s, and I
I
think like one
played
entry in the early
a
'90s?
very small bit of Dragon Slayer 2 when it had like the egg console Xanadu version. It's Dragon Slayer 2 Xanadu, is that right? Which actually became its own sub-series. And that's not the only Dragon Slayer game that became a different sub-series. Or sorry,
Yeah, the
I said it
Trail
wrong.
series is technically a spin-off of Dragon Slayer, because Dragon Slayer, I think, 6 was Legend of Heroes, and then Legend of Heroes 6 was Trails in the Sky.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the thing that all roads lead back to Dragon Slayer for Falcom.
Yeah, it's kind of like a shared ancestor. And I said it wrong. I said Dragon Slayer 2 Xanadu. It's actually called Xanadu Dragon Slayer 2. So that's like, I think it's on like Egg Console for like Switch, like in Japanese. And I played like a little bit of it, and like I was a little bit confused. I need to put more time into some of those really older games. But yeah, so yeah, Dragon Slayer came out in 1984. Then Xanadu Dragon Slayer 2 came out in 1985. There were a few spin-offs. Yeah, and Dragon Slayer: The Legend of Heroes came out in 1989, and that became the Legend of Heroes series, of which James just said became the Trails series, or a spin-off of a spin-off. So yeah, the fact that
Forked
this
off
is
into it, yeah.
the fact that this is a new Dragon Slayer entry is kind of like going back to the shared ancestor, like I said, right? And I've already seen some people online say stuff like, "Please don't be Dragon Slayer in high school," because I think people
I think
when Xanadu was first when Tokyo Xanadu was first announced, that caught people off guard because they were thinking like Xanadu next or whatever. But we'll
I
see.
think the key art that they've shown, like the very early key art, at least is giving me the vibes that it's going to be something darker. Because I do know when Dark Souls blew up, there were quotes from like people at Falcom saying, "Why didn't we make a game like this?" Which I can understand their reaction, because different games, but Xanadu Next has a very similar sort of structure to like early Souls likes, where it kind of wraps in on itself, you know?
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's the logo of it, so we'll see. It could be anything. But
I know, I know.
yeah, I'm very interested to see like what sort of perspective they're gonna use on this. I really hope that it's not just uh a typical like it might well be, but I hope it's just not a typical third person action RPG. Like if you're invoking Dragon Slayer, I really hope they I kind of hope it embraces the roots of it. But I'm trying to think of like how would you do that in a way
You mean
that
like
is
top-down kind of sprites,
yeah,
like the old
yeah,
style?
yeah. But how do you make that palatable to a modern audience? Do you make it like Sheeran the Wanderer style? I wonder. I don't know. But I kind of want them to surprise me in that and be something unconventional in the way
You
that like
know, if
that
they
the
made
way
a
that Kyoto
mystery dungeon,
Xanadu
if they made a
surprised
Sheeran
me.
the Wanderer style like mystery dungeon, that would actually be pretty neat. And it would
Yeah.
be something that I'd imagine would be easy enough for Falcom to fit within their scope of their company. Especially, like, I'm glad that at least we can entertain the idea of this not just being the same fucking like song and dance that they've done for the last decade, because Kyoto
Yeah.
Xanadu is different. So it's like, oh, thank
Yes.
God they can make something different.
Yeah, it's not Trails, it's not East, it's the dancing between those two IP for really God knows how long. Them starting to really branch out to like older stuff and other stuff is exciting, and
Credit
and
where
it's
credit is
necessary.
due. Like East 10 was fairly different from East 8 and 9 in some key ways. And it's like, okay, if they're gonna keep going along this way and they're like going to actually try and build up new IPs, it makes sense for them to do it this way. Because if your whole point is they need to expand IPs because the Trail series presumably is going to be finished within the next 10 years, their words, not mine.
Uh,
Well, yeah, we'll get to
do you
that.
think they probably? Do
Presum-
you think they will reach that 2031? Was it? How old is everybody by then?
So the
I
thing
did
is
that
that
already, Chow. You can't don't riff on my
Yeah.
my quirk.
So the thing that's crazy, but again, we'll get to that. But point being, it makes sense for them to just kind of like throw ideas at the wall, see what sticks, see what resonates with people. Because it's clear, like looking at stuff like Kyoto Xanadu, the budget is probably smaller than like, well, I don't know for sure. It's just because it's like side scrolling doesn't mean that the budget's actually lower than Trails or E. We don't know, but that's the impression I get from looking at it. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's smart. Like we were talking about earlier, like when CyberConnect 2, they said the whole reason that they did the Fuga series was to train on new staff with a smaller project that could come out quicker. And obviously, Falcom's always doing releases every year, but each individual project, it takes longer than like 1 or 2 years. Like East 10 took like 4 years. The whole reason that Daybreak 2 exists is because East 10 needed an every year. Probably needed 2 every years, but that's besides the point. But yeah,
I 2 announcement yet. That's gonna be
I mean, I guess are we gonna do the Falcom corner now or later? It depends on you guys.
well,
let's do it now.
There's so much Falcom news.
Yeah, I was gonna do it now.
Okay, so well, we'll get to new Dragon Slayer in development for console. Very cool. Very looking forward to seeing what form it'll take. But the next big bullet point on Falcom news this week is we got a new weekly Famitsu interview with Falcom president Toshihiro Kondo on just celebrating like the anniversary of the company and what their plans are moving forward, because they have a lot of things in motion here. So one of the big things that came out of that interview from Kondo was
Kyoto Xanadu will be fun.
that he plans to announce the final entry in the Trail series during the company's 50th anniversary, which is in 2031, and have it completed during its 51st year, which is 2032. So, and the plot for the Trails Beyond the Horizon 2 is already complete. The overall ending of the series is already decided. So that now, Kondo has been an unreliable narrator in terms of the roadmap of the Trails series, because the plans change all the time, development roadmaps shift all the time depending on the market conditions and stuff like that. But as of the moment, their current plan is to have this series finally done in the year 2032. And my mind was like, okay, this is fucking crazy. But I did ask people on social media, how old will you be at the year 2032? I'm like I'm gonna be 42 years old, man. And a lot of people had different answers. Some of our colleagues are like, we're gonna be fucking mid 40s by then. Some people are like, I'm gonna be reaching my 50s. Some people are like, I'm gonna be like 32 years old. Oh, I can feel my back aching. I'm like, okay, you people.
Oh my god.
But
This is
yeah.
what Gundam fans feels like when V Gundam was announced. I guess it was like the last one you see. It's like they've been waiting for like.
So yeah, I did
years.
conduct like a little mini fun poll on that on social media. But in general, how do you guys feel about? Okay, now we actually have like a somewhat firm release year that this series will finally be over. How does that make you feel?
I don't know. I already feel withdrawal from.
It's gonna
getting
feel
tied
weird. It's funny how
forever.
I've seen some people say, how are they going to like finish things up in 3 more games? And it's like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the by the end of Horizon, yeah, there's still like 1 or 2 more questions, but it's very clear where the series is heading for its conclusion. It's very clear what the finish line is. And once you get to that point in a narrative like this, I don't know, I could see them doing it. Obviously, they could not. It might take another year or 2, but I do think that generally, like within the next 10 years, the series is going to be done. I genuinely do feel that.
Yeah, and they're still finalizing like who will be the final protagonist and what their profession is going to be. So
my conspiracy take, and this has been the case since Kai came out in Japan, is that I think that Amelia's design looks too distinct to not be a main character. That is like absolutely conspiracy theory, but considering stuff that happens in Horizon, I feel like it would be a good twist. I don't know. We'll see.
Go back in time, guys. I'm going with a doctor. Just from the region of Rifurmia or whatever. Or an enforcer. I would love to have a game playing as an enforcer. As your main
I feel like if you're going to have an enforcer, like a main protagonist that isn't just like a former enforcer, I think the last one would, like the last arc would be when to do it. So who knows?
Yeah,
What
it's
what if Mick Byrne is the final protagonist?
God.
But that'd be too similar to Van.
He'll
That'd
just
be
say
too
it's a
similar to
prank,
Van.
bro. It's just a prank.
I have no idea how you like what could the final Trails arc protagonist be like. I don't know how you would this person has the responsibility of wrapping up the series now from their perspective. I don't know how you reconciliate that, honestly.
It could be
so many things. That'd be really funny. Okay, that'd be really funny actually. Red would be funny.
I mean, she'd fit though because she.
I know she is the series protagonist.
Yeah,
she is the series protagonist. Actually, that'd be funny. That'd be really funny if it was Ren. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's a long time coming.
It's an exciting time to be a Falcom fan. For the
it is
most exciting, I'd say, since early 2010s. That's my feeling. But
there's also some before
next time I see Kondo, I'm gonna ask him. So you're reviving Dragon Slayer, finally releasing Kyoto Xanadu. Where's the brand
remake of Romancia?
I will tell him
where's the expanded Ease 9?
No, that too. I'll tell him if you remake Brandish 2, you will have one of the most popular game developers in the entire world singing your praises for the next decade. You would sell millions of copies. Toby Fox would combust on the spot.
Before we get to the next bullet point, like a significant bullet point on this, there are some other notes from the Famitsu article, that where Kondo is kind of being frank. It's like I'm getting up there in age, there's only so much I got left in me, basically on what he says in that article. It's kind of this is a time of Falcom growth, but at the same time, it's there'll be a time when obviously with everyone where Kondo can no longer do what he's doing.
And I'm sure he's really thinking about it because of the Kato stuff. Because Kato just passed about a year ago, and for someone like Kondo who joined the company because he was such a big fan of Falcom's games, and Kato founded that company, it's it just makes sense.
Yeah, that this is the also just kind of looping back around just in center, ongoing theme of training up the next generation, making sure that they're being exposed to projects that are meaningful to their career growth, and eventually handing off the company to someone who is ready to do it, and making sure they have the proper training and guidance to do it.
It makes sense because it's a lot of people join the company for Trails, but when Trails is over, the company's inevitably going to have to get another new identity. So I think this is very smart. This is a smart way of doing it. And I obviously, it'll be a couple of years before we see how things turn out, or at least a couple of months before we see how it turns out with Kyoto Xanadu at least. But these are the right steps you would want to be making in a post-Trails Falcom world. And it brings me great joy to see this and be like, yep, they understand.
It's really weird because, when conducting that poll of how old people are going to be, you also see some people saying I've been playing this series for 15 plus years already. I grew up with this series. This is the series that that has defined a lot of a lot of my relationship with gaming. It's
I'm literally I am here in this voice call because of Falcom.
They also mentioned that they are development on the new East entry has begun. They mentioned that this might be an entry where Adol has been the oldest, so this will be the latest entry in the East chronology.
I wonder if they're actually just gonna do it. If they're gonna give us the North Pole game, because they have a pretty heavy tease about it in base game East 10, and then they kind of double down a bit.
I'm trying to remember how long he says it's been though, because he said it's been 20 years or 30 years. So that'd be very old at all, relatively.
Yeah, because the whole thing is that in the East canon, he disappears while heading to the North Pole to investigate.
They're looking at that Resident Evil 9 Chris or Leon model, and they're like, maybe we can make Adol into this.
Oh my god, if you make like a dad bod like Adol, that's going to do a lot of things to people we know.
And then of course the actual next final bullet point for Falcom news this week is Kyoto Xanadu. Obviously they really revealed some new characters like the student council members in it that has some really cool designs in it. But beyond that, we did get word that
Fuck is publishing this game in the West.
yeah, the Steam page for Kyoto Xanadu, the Blooming Phantom, has gone up on Steam, but is the Clouded Leopard release. So it is your usual, simplified to
English.
traditional
Yeah.
Korean, Chinese, or simplified to traditional Chinese and then Korean release. But also it'll have the Japanese audio and text in that release, which isn't typical when the Clouded Leopard
Yeah.
is releasing
I
it.
have-
So that
I have a
that
few
brings up the
thoughts.
question who's going to English
who's
distribute it?
handling it? Two things
Yeah.
I want to mention, and I will say first off that Sal and I, literally, Adam and I were at dinner when this Kyoto Xanadu stuff was dropping, and we read Sal's posts about it, and he speculated maybe it's Spike Chunsoft, and that was literally one of the things I thought of. It's maybe they might be it, because it's it won't be Xseed, it's not Nisa.
I did
It's
want to
not
mention, yeah, they did confirm that this is coming out on July 16th for Japan and Asia via the Steam page going up and official channels, social media channels from Falcom. So it's July 16th for those regions. There's still no Western release date because they're still coordinating it with whoever's supposed to be partner to distribute it in the West.
To be clear, when they announced it, they said it was a worldwide simultaneous release. Falcom's words, not mine. This game was shown at a Nintendo Direct worldwide with English and whatnot. The other thing I wanted to mention is that when I talked with Falcom, their PR guy in Japan at Tokyo Game Show 2024, I asked about because this was before we knew who was publishing it. And they told me that they were going to a bunch of different publishers, and they were even considering the possibility of self-publishing. So I don't think that's what's happening here 100%, but it is a possibility. And who knows? We've seen that playbook from a bunch of different companies at this point where they build up their teams. You saw it with Spike Chunsoft, you saw it with Idea Factory, you saw it with Cygames. Companies do this, and I'm sure that Falcom has looked at their peers and the way that they slowly build up a Western branch. This could be the first signs of Falcom slowly building up to a Western branch, or the second sign, because Gung Ho didn't translate first chapter. Actil did. We still don't know who licensed out Actil for the translation. Was it Gung Ho or was it Falcom? We don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. So it'll be tricky, opening up Western branch is always it's a very difficult process.
Again,
and a long
it's
timeline.
just speculation.
Yeah,
but
but best of luck. Hopefully they reveal it soon, whether it's them doing it themselves or it's they need to announce this soon because if they want this to be a worldwide simultaneous release, I think many people would be bummed out if the Western release is slightly delayed.
My speculation is that it might end up being a day and date release for PC, but it might be delayed for the physical version because they're going to want to partner with someone to handle publishing the physical release. So I could see that being a case where the only thing delaying things is the physical release.
It's also a bummer because that means you get the multiple Steam pages kerfuffle again. So people are going to get confused again. And
I think they can't afford to delay it because you have Trail second chapter coming out 2 months later unofficially.
Mm-hmm.
When I say unofficially, I mean because they haven't announced it, but they keep saying fall. But everyone knows it's going to be the end of September or at worst early October. They just have to release it at that time always.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, for people, for you and I, it doesn't matter when the English release comes out because I think I can speak for both of us. Where it's a Clouded Leopard port, we can buy it and play it on Steam day one. I'll just play it in Japanese, but Yeah, hopefully there's nothing fucky. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we just get a confirmation that, yeah, it is a day and date English release, and it's just, for whatever reason, the Western publisher wanted to announce it on their own terms. Which happens. It happens.
We'll see. Yeah, but unexpectedly heavy Falcom news this week.
No matter when the English release happens, stay tuned for my impressions of the Japanese version on PC in 3.5 months.
Yeah, and then,
4 months, yeah.
I guess we can move on to the next news story where Square Enix strikes back with a vengeance, doing what they do best.
Just when you thought they had started to learn.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. So we have talked about Square Enix's release strategy for various games for several years, culminating what was it, 2022, where they released like 6 games in 8 weeks or whatever it was, and each game at different platforms. And anyways, this is something that we predicted was going to happen unannounced at some point this year, and it happened. This is Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster, which originally launched on Switch 2 last year, is coming to PC and Xbox. I am not saying PlayStation because it's not announced for PlayStation. I don't know if we're reading between the lines here, if there's something that we've seen, but because it has like maybe Mikhail, you know this. I saw some speculation that because it has like a profile like support for like ROG Ally, like that there's some inclination that this is somehow Microsoft supported like partnership of some sort, whether it's marketing or publishing or what, and that's why it's not on PlayStation. Otherwise, I couldn't find like a definitive version of like why not PlayStation at this time. So despite new or newish at this time, Square Enix lead uh Kiryu saying like that they've learned their lesson, that they're going to like to have more multi-platform releases. Like this is still showing that staggered cadence of release from platform to platform for Bravely Default, because at some point in 6 months or so, we're gonna have to say, oh, now it's finally released on PlayStation at some point, maybe. Go ahead, James.
I'm going to make a. I'm going to use my psychic powers to look 2 years into the future, and I'm going to tell you right now, before it releases on PlayStation, it's going to get a random VR version, either on like Quest or like in partnership. It happened with Triangle Strategy.
That was also just like a total coincidence that someone on staff really liked Triangle Strategy enough to like even request it to be like to kind of
that VR port's really cool. By the way, Mikhail, when are you going to update your comparison article of that VR version?
I legit do it when I get the Steam frame, because that's the only way I get.
Oh wait, no, you can't. It's meta exclusive.
Oh fuck that.
but either way, like the whole the big like lead story here of this Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD remaster release is like it was shadow dropped out of nowhere. It caught everyone by surprise. It was not announced prior to release. The only indication that you might have got an inkling that it was going to happen was if you followed the Steam DB page for it by chance.
It actually got announced before on the like Xbox posted about it being out now on Xbox Series X, and then it went up on Steam DB a few minutes later, from what I remember. Because when I saw that Xbox thing, I immediately went to the Steam DB to check, and it was there like after refreshing a few times. So yeah, like, and then I was like, is it on PS5? I just started writing the news story, and I was like, I literally had PS5 in the headline, but obviously I removed it before publishing, because then we saw the trailer and it was confirmed it's just on Xbox Series X brackets Play Anywhere and on Steam. And to just go back to what Brian said, I feel like if a publisher is going to be out here saying that their game is Xbox Play Anywhere, that's fine. Like I wouldn't just assume that those kinds of games all have a deal. But like having like ROG Xbox Ally optimization being in it, it tells me that it has Microsoft support.
It's also,
and like I feel like if you're doing a Play Anywhere game, like suppose like if we assume this was supposed to come like maybe 1 year later, like this is all speculation. Now it came to Switch to June 5th. It was like a launch title, and if we assume it was gonna come everywhere else like on June 5th, 2026, and Microsoft wanted it there earlier, and then assuming that happened and they were already doing a PC version, they're like, yeah, sure, do it on Steam or whatever. because like the whole thing about Kiryu being multi-platform is one issue. The other issue, which all of us have been hoping Square Enix would have learned, is do not shadow drop your games on Steam like with no notice or anything, because it's not gonna, like, you're not gonna get any sales from it. Like, I don't think it's even crossed 1000 CCU on Steam, or maybe it has. But it's just like, what are you doing with that? Like, who are you? And this is not a Game Pass game either, so like people have to pay for it. It's like $40 with a 20% launch discount or whatever. So before I talk about like my impressions from the game, it's just like, what do you all think? Like, this shadow drop stuff, I feel like is not a good idea. Like,
It's
Square
not a good
Enix can't
idea.
do it.
It's something that Valve themselves even say is not genuinely, like, generally advised. They say that unless you're like 110% sure, it's just not a good idea.
It fucking killed The World Ends With You. I mean, what else can you say, you know?
There's many people, there's probably people, regular listeners to this podcast, that still don't understand that Neo The World Ends With You is on Steam.
Yeah, it's not Steam. It also got to play it's on PlayStation and Switch, and some people don't know that it's like on PlayStation because it was so heavily, advertised for Switch as well.
Yeah.
Oh man, like I played that on everything, and like the Steam version is like fantastic, but man, the Switch version was so rough. I should check it out on Switch too.
I remember playing Neo The World Ends With You at launch on PS5 using the PS4, and that was a good enough experience. But man, that PC version is too good for people to not even know it exists. But I will say the funniest thing about this announcement for me, and I think for Adam, is that since it happened literally the morning, like, before we headed to the press room at the Moscone Center at GDC, Kyle Prahl, who handles some of the Square Enix PR stuff occasionally for 47, was there. We just said he handed a Post-it note with a code to us.
Oh, that was really funny.
Yeah, he kind of joked that, like, this is a first for me. I've never given out review code via Post-it note.
Well, it was the first for us too.
Yeah.
to receive not the first to receive a physical review code, but the first time to receive a handwritten review code.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so I mean, another winning strategy from Square Enix to shadow drop one of its most beloved titles on without prior notice.
And yeah, just going back to what Adam said, like when this announcement happened, Adam quoted the press release which says, like, I've posted it in our staff chat, like, it said the ending of the press release about Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster. It says an HD remaster redesigned to be played comfortably on modern consoles will be released exclusively for Nintendo Switch 2 on June 5th, 2025. So like I just saw that, and I remembered he posted that on Blue Sky again, and yeah, it's just like, what are you doing, Square Enix? Like, just
I'm interested to see like how they handled. Like, I didn't pick it up. I don't know how much people got their hands on time with it. But like, I remember when they was released on Switch 2 to make use of its like mouse cursor gimmick. Like, they had like mini games that exclusively only use the mouse controls on it. Like, even when you like accidentally like tapped like the mini game section in that game, you were forced to detach the Joy Cons and make them into the mouse. Use the mouse on them to maneuver, because it would disable controller navigation if you accidentally put the it on mini game mode on it. So I'm kind of wondering to see how this release handles it.
So I have played both versions. I have the Xbox version and the Steam version, and I have tested the mini games. What it does is you use both analog sticks as the left and right cursor, which would be the Joy-Con mouse controls.
That's not good. That's not good.
How's it feel?
So the rhythm mini game is playable, I'd say, because I'm really good at rhythm games in general, and it took me about maybe 10 seconds to get used to how this was here. But that second mini game, which is, I forgot what it's called, where you're flying the ship, that shit was like unplayable with the like using the analog sticks instead of mouse controls. And I think like the Xbox version appears to have mouse controls, because when I go to the settings, there's an option for like keyboard and mouse. But what I was curious about is on Steam Deck, I was like, if I can just play around with Steam input, I can probably set it up so that I can use the left and right trackpad as both mouse cursors like how it is on the Switch too. But I wasn't able to like finish testing that, which is why the article which I'm gonna do will be up probably by the time the podcast goes up, or maybe the same day. But yeah, I wasn't able to finish it in time for the recording. But yeah, I have been like playing Bravely Default since like this thing released, and I even got my 3DS copy out to like play that and see how that feels and stuff. There is one more thing I want to say though, is like for those who were curious about it. So when like remember when Bravely Default came to North America a year after the Japanese release, it had some costume changes and some adjustments, right? There was like a big like hoopla at that time where everyone said, "Oh, the North American release is censored or whatever." And what happened with Switch 2 is the North American and European release follow what happened with the 3DS Western release, but they actually had the Japanese version was unchanged. So the Japanese Switch 2 release is unedited and is supposed to be like how it is. I
Oh, wait
actually
a
own
second.
that.
I didn't even realize that. That's the version I
Yeah.
own.
Yes, and that's the version I bought. That's one of the two game key cards I own, period. I have that and Kunitsugami. So because I got a code for Bravely Default's US release, and I had the physical key card thing, I was like, you know what, screw it. I'll just test both of them in case there's any difference. So, like, yeah, just be as thorough as possible. So, there is one thing to note though, that the Steam and Xbox versions are universal builds worldwide, and both the store pages say that this version has certain changes to content in game. So, if you want the HD remaster with no changes for whatever reason, the only way to get it is buying the Japanese eShop release or the Japanese keycard release. So, yeah, that's something to keep in mind.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you,
And yeah,
Square
I'll
Enix.
have my article. Yeah, I'll have my article up like before Monday for sure. Uh, if anyone wants to buy it on Steam, the port is a little bare bones, but it runs like flawlessly on Steam Deck, 90 FPS, without even breaking a sweat. I am a bit surprised that the Switch 2 and Xbox versions, which I was playing on my monitor and TV, they look kind of bad. Like I honestly haven't pixel counted yet, but it appears like it might be closer to 1080p, not even like 1440p for the actual gameplay, which it feels a bit confusing. That like you'd think
Maybe it's a case of they just don't change the resolution between handheld and docked.
it's possible, but then like that just like so did they do the same thing on Series X where they just use the Series S version? Because the ROG Ally, when I play that on my like monitor, I can get like 4K easily, and the Xbox version looks almost identical to the Switch 2 version docked. So it's a bit like whatever. Anyway, I'll do my comparisons and all that, but I think the PC port is like fantastic, and if anyone wants to buy it, like the best deal to get it right now is GMG. I had to like gift it to a friend of mine because I told him it'll take a year to come, and like I lost that bet. So yeah, I ended up paying for it. But yeah, GMG is the cheapest right now, I think, for buying it on Steam.
So thank you for kind of like your immediate, unplanned, off the cuff, impressions of Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster now on Steam. Yeah, so I've installed it, but I don't know when I'm going to get to it. Like, because I've never actually, I think probably the only person on this podcast that has not played Bravely
Yeah,
Default. So I'm like, all
I'm
right, here's
debating.
my chance.
I'm debating on when I get around to it whether I should play the PC version or the Switch 2 version. I'm actually leaning now towards the Switch 2 version between the minigame stuff, and I didn't even realize that there was that difference between the Japanese and Western releases. So since I have the Japanese version, it's like I might as well play that one because that's novel. So.
Mhm. All right, we have two kind of quick announcements here, and I believe this first one, or maybe no, I'll switch the order here real quick. This first one was first playable at GDC. I don't know, Adam or James, if you played this one. This is the announcement of Delphinium.
We talked about it earlier.
Oh, you did? Okay, I must have missed it. I apologize. But we have the announcement trailer for this game up on the website as well. So this is a farming sim RPG with like a kind of a 16-bit-ish art style, specifically focused on a focus on queer characters and narratives. And it looks very cozy and very pretty. So good.
One of the I wouldn't even say it's necessarily a cozy game because it like the way that demo starts, it makes it very clear that it's not like just all sunshine and rainbows. And I didn't hear this directly, but Geo again at Polygon did tell us that he asked what their inspirations was, and he was correct. He was told that one of the main inspirations was actually Rune Factory. So neat.
Cool.
But yeah, already talked about it earlier. Excited to play more.
Not that this means a whole lot, but Serenity Forge calls this game a cozy farming sim. But so like that's their words. They call it cozy, but it may not be very cozy. I mean,
I mean,
it
it's
gets
a
pretty
marketing term at
serious.
this point.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
So. And then the other game, this game was first shown at the Future Game Show Spring Showcase, which was basically at the same time as Game Developer Conference. They're calling this an open world dragon combat RPG. That's a genre.
That's actually my framing. I think they just call it open world action game, but I'm like, okay, there's
Okay,
clearly a dragon
Adam is
combat
calling this
element.
an open world dragon combat RPG. This
Yes.
is Sagas of Lumin. It's going to be entering early access in 2026, and yeah, we have a pretty lengthy, well, a 90-second release window trailer, but that actually shows a fair bit of purported gameplay, and yeah, it takes place primarily on the back of a dragon, though it does show some third person combat as well. I don't know. This looks pretty neat. A lot of aerial combat, a lot of like airships, that sort of thing, breathing fire
More
down on.
dragon riding games like of the scope. So this is cool. Like we can't just be stuck with Dragon Guard, Panzer Dragoon, and Lair till the end of time.
And Scalebound. Oh wait, that didn't happen.
Oh man, that still hurts. But yeah, this looks cool. Looks cool.
It says it.
They call it just single player semi open world action RPG, but I kind of felt like that's not descriptive enough. I'm going to call it a dragon combat RPG because if you look at the trailer, there's definitely that's what sets it apart. There's a lot of you're flying on a dragon and you're shooting down airships and you're breathing fire. So
good enough for me.
Yeah.
It looks like some of the screenshots also show that there'll be on foot segments as well. So Dragon Guard were so bad.
Yeah.
And there is a demo. From a very quick glance, it seems like the demo has some performance issues, but there is a demo available on Steam.
Dragon Guard, welcome back.
We only have a few other headlines going through the remainder of this podcast. We're starting to now get trailers for the upcoming, I believe, July release of Granblue Fantasy Relink Endless Ragnarok. I'm trying to remember, was that July or June?
This is July.
July 9th. Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, 8th in Japan. So, we got the character trailer for Beatrix, who is newly playable in that version, and I'm assuming that we're going to have the other three characters, doled out between now and July.
Yeah,
So
the closed beta is going on this weekend too, as at the time of this recording. So there's also just been new footage from people playing that beta. It's much like the demo that came out for Granblue, where you have like a low level characters with like a higher level of quests. So the main purpose of the closed beta is to test out the crossplay feature, which is new to Endless Ragnarok. I assume that'll be like a backported feature to the base game as well. And people have been having a lot of fun with it as side games, works out any bugs and all the stuff that you would hope in a beta of this capacity to test out. But it's been cool seeing like Beatrix in action because she's playable there, and some of the changes like under the hood that people have been finding out as well. Like I think some of the things that people have noticed in it, aside from just the interface stuff being new, there's some like changes to like how the debuffs and buff stacking works in it. And I think you can also skip the animations of like when you're going into a boss fight and defeating them. Like I remember like a good chunk of like when you're farming bosses is like the intro scene and the victory slaying them scene. Like those seem to be skippable now. So there's like a handful of like quality of life features that people have been noticing from their closed beta experience, which is cool.
No, I didn't know the details of the closed beta kind of reception and impressions. So thanks for kind of getting that in there. We have an update. There was a live letter from the producer for Final Fantasy XIV this week, talking about the release plans for patch 7.5. I could read what we have here, but James, I don't know if maybe you have a little bit more,
I was
context
at
for what
GDC. I
they announced
wasn't
here.
watching that stream.
Oh,
I
that's true. Apologies.
I
It's going
will
to release in two
say,
parts. That's what I look at as being kind of interesting.
yeah, that's because the last major patch is always like that.
Okay.
Stuff that we already knew. There's going to be a new Ultimate raid. There's going to obviously be the final Alliance raid in the series. There's going to be the new zone for Occult Crescent. Hopefully, it's good this time. We're going to get Beastmaster,
Limited job, yeah.
which is a limited job, and there's capstone quests for the Allied Society stuff. So
some people have been making I guess a positive response over like the new die system that they're implementing. Like there's like 3 categories now for the die that they talked about, and people have been it's been received, it seems like, positively. What I hear.
It's been reception to Dawn Trail has been ping ponging back and forth because it seems like every time they do something good, there's like also, or almost every time they do something good, there's like an equal, or maybe not equal, but for example, people were actually pretty happy with the state of the Savage Raid tier this last patch. People were very happy with it. People were actually pretty happy with the Deep Dungeon stuff. People were happy with the rewards for the Chaotic Raid. So people actually did have pretty decent expectations for the recent Variant and Criterion Dungeon that they released. Which I'm not going to explain what this is. We could be here all day. Long story short, people were expecting it to have a certain level of... they were expecting the rewards to be a step up, an upgrade from the Variant and Criterion Dungeons from Endwalker, which was the last expansion. That was the expectation. They were worse than last expansion. Not the same, not better, worse. And that just set off a whole wave of doomerism, which I completely understand, because it's like, man, we thought you were learning, and then this happens, and it's like, no, you weren't.
But either way, these are all on the path to when they get around to announcing their next major expansion, which is sometime this year, right? You have the Fan Fest.
Final Fantasy XIV Fan Fest in Anaheim, California, next month. So, I live in Long Beach. Obviously, I'm going to be there.
So you'll be on the ground as they usually reveal the expansion like at the first Fan Fest, right?
Yes, they will.
And
then the way it's going to work is that this patch drops at the end of April, I believe, and Fan Fest is the week beforehand.
Okay. And I forgot the cadence. So they announced the first trailer and the title drop of that expansion. Do they also announce or tease the upcoming new jobs, or is that the next Fan Fest?
They tease the jobs. What they usually do is that they'll have like Yoshi P will wear a shirt that's meant to be a like very indistinct, not indistinct, like a very sly nod to what that job is. Like, for example, last time around, he wore a shirt that had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on it. And the reason why is that each of their names are based off of a famous artist.
Yeah.
And Pictomancer was one of the new jobs that we got in Dawn Trail.
I like it's like the job wasn't ninja, because that's what the Teenage Mutant Ninjas are.
They already have ninja, right? In
I know, yeah.
That was in
the Yeah.
But so we'll get something sly like that. Something that's a nod that won't immediately make it obvious what it is. But
what is the popular speculation right now on what the new job might be?
I think a lot of people kind of just don't know, because
there's so many already.
There's so many of them. I think people are really gunning for Corsair, and if they're not cowards, we should be getting a new tank this time around. I think they might be too cowardly to add a new tank, so who knows? I'm a tank main. I would love a new tank to play, but I just too early to say. I feel like we'll get at least an idea if they're going to add a new tank job by FanFest time. So stay tuned. That will be
Yoshi P's shirt will just be a full-on tank, and it's like, I wonder what it could be.
But I'm excited. Obviously, But yeah, not much to say at the moment.
Okay.
Cool. Some sales and some dates. The Octopath Traveler series has crossed 7 million copies worldwide. The Bravely series has crossed 4 million copies worldwide. Both of these got new art. And I don't know, as always with these sales milestones, the art's pretty cute. Like the art
Yeah.
for Octopath shows both Hanet and, what's her name? The Beast Girl from 2.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
it's
blanking.
worth noting
Mhm.
that this 7 million sales milestone comes just a few short months after the 6 million sales milestone, which was already after Octopath Zero, which means that Octopath Zero is selling very well for what it is.
Or at the very least, its release has kind of raised the tides of people buying the other
Yeah.
Octopath games.
Though if you also look at the page, it is clear that Octopath Zero is selling well, genuinely, which is good for a variety of reasons. One, it means that I don't think there's any concern on whether or not we will get an Octopath 3. It's very clearly one of Square Enix's currently most important franchises, so there's going to be more games, which I'm happy about. I love Octopath 2. It's one of my favorite RPGs. And
whether or not it's next or not, we're also eventually going to get an Octopath Traveler 02.
Yeah. And also, it's just good because it means that, hey, one of those, we salvaged this gacha game for normal people to play is a successful business strategy. Square Enix and other companies take note. So, I assume that in the next couple of years we will get Nier Reincarnation so I can finally actually play Nier 3.
I mean, I think that seems like the obvious one. I've also seen people actually also really hoping for Dissidia Opera Omnia as another one that's like, please do this one.
That one's really fun. Yeah, there's a lot of really good roster additions to that. They go kind of deep on it. That'd be a really fun one to have. Did you mention the Bravely one yet, Brian? Because I have a question for you.
I just mentioned the headline that the series reached 4 million.
Yeah. So the Bravely series 4 million art is really funny. Do you see any interesting out of place characters in that artwork by chance?
I've only played Bravely 2, so.
Oh, okay. There's
that dragon thing, right?
The dragon's from Bravely 2.
Wait, no. Oh, wait, that fairy is from the fucking mobile game.
No, the Anne is on the top left corner. She's a dark fairy. She's from Bravely Second.
Okay.
So, why are you having a Bravely Second character on here, huh? Huh? Come on. I guess I'm speaking for Cullen here. I'm speaking for Cullen here, but
while we're talking about really funny quirks with the artwork, I love how the Octopath series 7 million sold. It's very obvious that they wrote 700 mon, and then they edited it to say 7 million.
Put the comma in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very funny. But yeah.
Well, hopefully, they revisit Bravely Second, because it's cool. Bravely Default and Bravely Default 2 are cool games, but I think Bravely Second does deserve a re-release. Some people, it's a more accessible game that people can play.
But sorry, I'm looking at the art. The 4 in the middle are from Bravely 1, as well as with the fairy in the upper right. Like Bravely 2, not second. 2 is not on here.
It's the dragon.
It's just dragon. So like Seth and who are the other characters? I'm blanking on their names. Maybe they weren't very memorable. That's why.
Not very memorable is a way to describe Bravely Default 2. I think the only thing I remember is that one screenshot people made. It's like, have an interest in women's feet, do you? Like, god damn it. That one party chat.
All right, let's run down some announcement and release dates. We learned back in February that this game was going to get a release this year. This is Dread Delusion, which released on PC back in 2024. It's going to launch on all consoles, including Xbox One, on March 17th, so just a few days from now. This is an announcement of an announcement. On March 19th, we'll get the announcement from Compile Heart for the next mainline Neptunia game, which will be the first mainline game in over 10 years.
Well, let's go. Mm-hmm.
Josh,
What?
you excited?
Of course, I'm. I
Yeah,
actually
you're
am curious.
hyperdimension Kieran. Yeah.
I don't, high definition. But yeah, the last one, the last mainline is Mega Dimension Neptunia V2, not 7. On that, I'm really curious to see what this looks like because it's like it's been so long since the last one of these that the gaming industry has changed a lot since when did Mega Dimension Neptunia come out? It was like so long ago.
Like 2015, 2016. Yeah.
Yeah, if you wanted this to be an accurate representation of like today's market,
They need to introduce
ver-
a Steam Deck Chan.
yeah, they need to introduce that.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they unironically will.
I don't know if the little sisters are dead or not because there's technically no handhelds anymore unless you count like Switch 2 as one. But like there's no Vita and PSP anymore, so Uni is irrelevant.
Well, wait a
2DS
wait a second. They waited to announce this, knowing that there's gonna be that portable PlayStation.
Oh god, yeah. Then well, yeah, that's a real. DS and 3DS are no longer a thing. So the twin sisters for Blanc, I think her name is Blanc, are they dead? Xbox is in a weird place. So is what does Vert look like these days? There's a lot of questions I have about this upcoming thing. If it's meant to be, if it's meant to parody the modern iteration of the game industry, like the series always has, what the fuck does that look like? Because there's so many things about the game industry that's like it's borderline parody in of itself, except it's reality. You know, like what does the instead of AI, like will AI be represented in some way in this upcoming entry? What does ballooning, inflating costs of of games at an crazy rate, leading to like crazy layoffs here and there? What does that look like? You know, in this I don't know. I have so many questions. I'm interested. I don't know if I'm excited. It depends on if the gameplay isn't dog shit, which is the Mega Dimension game wasn't bad in terms of gameplay, but a lot of Neptunia spin-offs have not great gameplay either, which is I don't know. I don't know. I have I don't know if I'm excited. I have to learn more, which is what I'll do, I guess, when this gets announced.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about it next week.
What day is it getting announced? It's like March 19th, but is it like
Probably Wednesday
will
night.
be- No, let me go check actually. March
It might
19th
be in Famitsu.
at 5 a.m. No, it's next Thursday, early morning.
I wonder if
It
there'll
might
be
be in
like
Famitsu too.
yeah, it might be a
Who
Famitsu
knows?
leak before then.
I don't know. Maybe we'll see. That'd be fun. As you see, I have a lot of thoughts about this upcoming entry.
Sci-fi turn-based RPG Stellar Tactics is going to be released on PC on March 30th. Not a game we've covered on the site before, but kind of interesting because this game is one of those long in early access games. It's been in early access since 2016. So basically, it'll have been in early access for just under 10 years before its full release. So cool to see that it made it to the finish line.
This feels like one of those games, or not feels like. I was actually going on the website. It seems like it's mostly a solo dev, and like the type of game that's just like some person just wanted to make a game and put it out in early access, and it's kind of like just over the course of 10 years just has like almost like a personal blog, like, hey, here's where I updated the game today, kind of thing. And like at least got like a bit of a following, just people just following this guy. I'm not saying he did it all by himself, but primarily him developing this game kind of probably in his spare time over the course of a decade, and that's just counting the early access period. So like finally getting a full release.
Like Ask the Libra,
Yeah.
sounding like.
So it has
All
this
right.
game has more than 1,000 reviews in the early access period. So people have been playing it.
It's kind of cool. They kind of got like a small following over the years over it.
Mm-hmm.
Where Winds Meet, we talked about that it has like a 3-chapter DLC expansion coming out over the March, April, May months. The chapter 2, Ling Zhao, is going to release on April 2nd. Sigma Star Saga DX. This is we talked about this I think late last year. It was a Game Boy Advance game, and it's being published to PC and Switch and PlayStation 5 from Way Forward. So it's rare that we see like a Game Boy Advance game make it to modern consoles. At least I think so. And it's releasing on April 7th for Switch, PlayStation 5, and Steam.
It also has a limited run games component in that they're doing some physical releases, I believe, in the future. But they even did I think it's very limited in like past, you can't get it anymore. But they're actually releasing like a new Game Boy cart with this version, which is cool. But it is also limited run.
I think I remember we talked about
So,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Good luck.
It being like a Game Boy Advance game, like when you look at the trailer, it's just like it really is. You can tell right away that it was designed for it because of how like the oversized character sprites in it, and you needed that for the Game Boy Advance because it was fairly small. You needed readability, easy readability for a handheld game on that. So that's why like things often had like oversized character models on that screen, so you could easily see what you're doing.
Even then, it wasn't enough because Nintendo decided to release a little handheld called the Game Boy Micro.
Yeah. I was good with my GBA SP. That's all I needed.
Mongil Stardive is releasing on April 15th for PC. This is the free-to-play game from Netmarble.
Adam, did you ever get an answer on what a Mongol is?
Actually did not ask.
What's Mongol?
The Idea Factory game Calamity Angel Special Delivery released last year in Japan and earlier this year for consoles in February. It's going to get a PC release in April, on April 15th. East Memoire, Revelations in Celceta. I forgot about this game. Like I remember that it existed, but I forgot if it released, didn't release, or whatever. But this is like the re-release of Memories of Celceta, now called Revelations in Celceta, is releasing on Switch on April 28th.
Why didn't we include this in the Falcom Corner? You forgot.
I forgot about it.
I forgot.
But also,
too.
like, well, Oath and Felgana got the East Memoir treatment, and that was like a pretty significant upgrade.
Yeah, that had like new art, and like a fast forward mode, and like a challenge thing. And this one, it seems like it's just like a slightly remixed soundtrack. I think.
Yeah,
that's about it.
I think that's all it is. So it's not to the same level as the previous East Memoir game. So kind of interesting that that's how they tagged it.
I still find it also a little bit amusing that they just decided to change the title. I can only assume because they thought saying East Memoir Memories is like too redundant, so they had to go with Revelations. Okay.
Yep.
I'll throw back to Revelations Persona.
Ariana and the Elder Codex. This is from Idea Factory and Compile Heart, released in August in Japan. And March, or I guess it's releasing on March 24th for PS5 and Switch, and then it's going to be releasing on PC on April 29th. So there are demos available for all platforms, to the best of my knowledge. And that's it. After a couple shorter podcasts, we're back to a 3-hour podcast at this point. So
we covered a lot.
Welcome back, everyone. Yeah, we did cover a lot. It was a big week, so we kind of knew that going in. So a lot of talk from here's my opportunity to kind of recap. We all the talk from GDC at the beginning, so really cool to hear you guys' Adam and James' experience over at that over the last week, and obviously more to come because you guys are both planning to at least publish a few more opinion and op-eds up on the site for what you're able to see there. Obviously, our kind of reviews of Monster Hunter Stories 3, Twisted Reflection, and GreedFall: The Dying World we got to talk about today are written up on the site. We had Mikhail's interview with Inon Zur, and we had Josh's preview for Stupid Never Dies up on the site as well. Follow us on Discord, discord.gg/RPG site. Follow us on social media. Just search for RPG Space Site. You should be able to find us. If you listen to this podcast, either directly through the site or through your podcast service of choice, leave us a like, leave us a rating. We love to see those. I will not be here the next couple weeks, so I trust these folks to hold down the fort. So have a good time. I'm just got IRL trips.
There's a pretty big game releasing next week, and that is 7 Deadly Sins Origin. No, I mean
that's right. Let's fucking go.
Crimson Desert. That's what I meant.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
But
so
yeah, the podcast
just
will be back next week. Go ahead.
look out for tiny small game Crimson Desert compared to gigantic Seven Deadly Sins Origin.
There you go. Yeah. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. Until you hear from us then stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to y'all later.
My friends have been calling Crimson Desert Crimbo